there's a new member. Perfect. Hello. Sorry about that. I realized I didn't move my camera after I moved my chair in here. So tonight we're gonna be making 2 sets of candles. Lavender for anti-anxiety and clean linen for smell. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna get the plate here. Okay. And then we'll get our wax over here. We're using soy wax tonight. How do I want to do this? Aha. This will be perfect. Okay. We're at 200 grams of wax. We're going to put this in our wax melter. And then we're going to turn our wax melt up to 185. And we'll cover that up. So far we know we have 200 grams of wax. I don't need this one tonight. My throat is tickling. Tickling! Oh, yeah! Blah, 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 blah. We're going to add a bit of silver mica powder to this dose, to this mixture. I'll be right back. I need to get my phone. Oh, I do have my phone. It's in my pocket. I need my drink, though. While we're waiting, we're going to switch to our normal video response. So I'm going to start this. It's a war fronts video. Ukraine has entered the Iran war. It was 1 day ago.
There's a new member to the war with Iran, and it might surprise you. Ukraine has attacked Iranian military equipment inbound to Russia in the Caspian Sea. Depending on who you ask, this either hit Iranian and Russian cargo vessels carrying what Tehran swears we tell you, wasn't drone equipment, or exclusively Russian shipping that was nonetheless carrying Shahed drones. I'll leave it up to you which version you find more credible. But whichever is true, there's no doubting that this has blown open a new front in both the ongoing war in the Middle East and Ukraine's war with Russia. And, as you might have guessed, Iran isn't shrugging this one off. On the contrary, they are pissed, with senior politicians openly discussing retaliatory strikes on Kyiv. So, buckle up, ladies and gents, because two wars are basically colliding here. And whatever happens in the coming days, you can be sure that we're all in for a hell of a bumpy ride. When worlds collide. Now, for nearly half a year at this point, there have been two major wars raging that have basically been as separate, self-contained events. The war in Ukraine belongs in one box, and the war in the Middle East goes in another. That approach partially made sense, at least at the time, and at least on the surface level. Recent events, however, have shown that the Iran war and the Ukraine war have far deeper connections below the surface than many would like to admit. The focal point for this is the Caspian Sea, a gigantic salty lake that is so gigantic and salty, everyone agreed to just call it a sea, that sits between Europe and Asia. It borders Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, and Azerbaijan, but for today's video, the border countries that matter most are Russia and Iran. Importantly, like most lakes, it's surrounded by land, so there's no way for any random navy to just sail in there. Also important, none of the 5 countries that border it are named Ukraine. For years now, Moscow. There's a new member to the war with Iran, and it might surprise you. Ukraine has attacked Iranian military equipment inbound to Russia in the Caspian Sea. Depending on who you ask, this either hit Iranian and Russian cargo vessels carrying what Tehran swears we tell you, wasn't drone equipment, or exclusively Russian shipping that was nonetheless carrying Shahed drones. I'll leave it up to you which version you find more credible. But whichever is true, there's no doubting that this has blown open a new front in both the ongoing war in the Middle East and Ukraine's war with Russia, and, as you might have guessed, Iran isn't shrugging this one off. On the contrary, they are pissed, with senior politicians openly discussing retaliatory strikes on Kyiv. So, buckle up, ladies and gents, because two wars are basically colliding here. And whatever happens in the coming days, you can be sure that we're all in for a hell of a bumpy ride. When worlds collide. Now, for nearly half a year at this point, there have been two major wars raging that have basically been as separate, self-contained events. The war in Ukraine belongs in one box, and the war in the Middle East goes in another. That approach partially made sense, at least at the time, and at least on the surface level. Recent events, however, have shown that the Iran war and the Ukraine war have far deeper connections below the surface than many would like to admit. The focal point for this is the Caspian Sea, a gigantic salty lake that is so gigantic and salty, everyone agreed to just call it a sea, that sits between Europe and Asia. It borders Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, and Azerbaijan, but for today's video, the border countries that matter most are Russia and Iran. Importantly, like most lakes, it's surrounded by land, so there's no way for any random navy to just sail in there. Also important, none of the 5 countries that border it are named Ukraine. For years now, Moscow and Tehran have been using the waterway's enclosed nature to ferry munitions, personnel, equipment, and most importantly, drones back and forth to each other. But over the weekend, that suddenly became a whole lot harder. On July the 25th, the Security Service of Ukraine, the SBU, sent long-range, one-way attack drones over the Caspian Sea and struck 2 cargo ships, the Portolya II and the Begay, along with a Russian missile boat. At the time of recording on Tuesday morning, it still remains unclear to what extent they were damaged. Kiev has pointed to very strong results, and Iran has claimed at least 1 sailor was killed, but there's been little information beyond that. The SBU did not stop there, though. The following morning, Zelensky announced that he had instructed Ukrainian intelligence to hand friendly governments everything they had assembled on Russian satellite surveillance of American facilities in the Gulf, which Moscow had reportedly been providing to assist Iran in targeting American forces and bases across the region. There's good reason to believe that this has been more than just a few hints and clues about locations, too. Reports from the early days of Operation Epic Fury took note of Iranian strikes having significantly higher success rate targeting both US and Gulf assets than they did during last summer's 12-day war. Nicole Graevsky, a researcher at Sciences Po, came out and said that Iran had essentially adopted Russian targeting strategies. Now, if your first reaction to all of this was, Ukraine attacked Iran? Aren't they a little bit busy? Well, that's a sensible question to be asking, and not too many of us had it on our bingo cards just a few days ago. According to Kiev, though, the ships got caught in their crosshairs for a very valid reason, one that would make them legitimate targets of war. Ukrainian military intelligence has tracked the Begay for years at this point, logging back and forth transits carrying ammunition, artillery shells, drone equipment, and all sorts of other goodies inbound to supply the Russian military. In this light, the SBU framed the operation as one of self-defense. By shipping these materials to Russia, Iran had essentially entered the Ukraine war, not the other way around. When taken in conjunction with months of Russian strikes on Ukraine's southern ports and attempts to choke off shipping inbound to Kyiv, the raison d'etre behind the operation starts to make a whole lot of sense. That said, this was not done without risk. Keep in mind, Iran has been indiscriminately bombing housing, energy, desalinization, and all sorts of civilian infrastructure in countries, like Qatar, that have been helping them diplomatically. This hasn't exactly earned them a reputation of being reluctant to pull the trigger. True to form, Iran's foreign minister Abbas Araghchi wasted little time in posting on X that, quote, whatever the freeloader in Kyiv did cannot go unanswered. And yes, interesting to see the word freeloader in there. That tweet was written in English, so presumably it's designed to appeal to MAGA readers who remain both anti-Ukraine and anti the war in Iran. As to what Iran's answer will be, though, it's kind of hard to say. The man who's supposed to be running the show, Supreme Leader Mojtaba Khamenei, remains completely in the shadows with zero first-hand proof of life since February. This has left the Iranian regime largely governed by the ultra-hardline Revolutionary Guard commander Ahmed Vahidi, with the more pragmatic reformist camp represented by the likes of President Masoud Pezeshkian and Araghchi himself squeezed under ever more pressure. Now, we want to be clear that the reformist camp in Tehran is not any form of moderate opposition that wants a systemic overhaul to the Islamic Republic's governance. Pezeshkian himself backed the crackdown back in January that reportedly killed as many as 40,000 people in just 2 days. That said, they are genuinely more willing to engage with the wider world. It's been the Iranian president who's consistently pushed for the additional deal with Washington to put the fighting to an end so that the country could resume some sense of normalcy. The hardliners, meanwhile, are openly calling for retaliatory strikes on Ukraine. Kyiv is within range of many of Iran's longer-range missiles. They would have to fly over Armenian or Azerbaijani airspace to get there, which is a hurdle, but honestly, with the way these guys have been firing off at just about any civilian ship in the Strait of Hormuz, regardless of which flag it flies, it's hard to see any such diplomatic niceties being too much of an obstacle. And Iranian politicians have not been shy about saying this in public. Former Iranian MP Nezamuddin Masouvi went on record to say that, quote, the response to this fireworks display in the Caspian Sea should be delivered in the Black Sea, referencing the body of water off Ukraine's south coast. Ebrahim Azizi, Iran's top parliamentary security official, had earlier declared the entirety of Ukraine to be a legitimate target. Another widespread call has been to lift the self-imposed 2,000-kilometer ceiling on Iran's ballistic missile program, to which Tehran had largely abided in years gone by. That said, we do want to be clear that firing on Ukraine is not guaranteed. Right now, Kiev's actions seem largely focused on protecting its own security by way of stopping incoming shipments to Russia, not all-out war with Iran. If Tehran starts to launch on Kiev, though, Ukraine likely wouldn't hesitate to return far. Northern Iran sits well within range of their long-range FP-1 drones, which already have a track record of overwhelming Russia's air defense systems. Just ask the CEO of Wildberries. Regardless of how or if Tehran decides to respond, the question still stands.
So
Why
we
did
are
Ukraine think
now
that a
at
few shipments
300
would be
grams.
worth firing on in the first place? And before we get on to Ukraine's rationale for hitting those Iranian ships, let's take a quick pause so I can tell you about Front.co. If you haven't already heard, it's our subscriber site for people who want to get really into the weeds about major conflicts. Every week we publish 2 exclusive videos and 3 expert-written articles covering the world's biggest flashpoints. And good news for everyone watching this video, that absolutely includes Ukraine and Iran, rather obviously. Just to give you a flavor of what we're all about, in recent weeks we've published a deep dive debunking the myth that Russia is running out of armor, an in-depth analysis on the ways that exaggerating its advances is costing Moscow's army dearly, and an insider explainer on what Ukraine hopes to achieve by isolating Crimea. On the Iran side, we cover everything from whether the Gulf states can defend themselves without America to what role the Houthis are playing in the current conflict. Look, if you like what we do here on the main channel, you'll probably love Fronts. A subscription costs just $5 a month, and it helps support all the important work that we do. That's Fronts.co. Check it out. And now back to the recent strikes in the Caspian Sea. 2 sides of the same coin. Now, to understand how Kiev arrived at the decision to directly strike Iranian vessels, we have to go back a bit, because the beef between Ukraine and Iran isn't new. Much of it involves the alliance between Moscow and Tehran that's been steadily strengthening over the last few decades, largely centered on a set of common adversaries, namely the countries that we would call the West. This bond accelerated during the Arab Spring days when Tehran and Moscow both backed Syria's dictator Bashar al-Assad. But it wasn't until Russian President Vladimir Putin invaded Ukraine back in 2022 that the two turned their alliance into a massive, mutually beneficial exchange, one based on directing support for the other rather than just propping up useful proxy leaders. In the case of the Ukraine war, that meant, more than anything, Iran bulk shipping Moscow something it sorely lacked: cheap, devastating, one-way attack drones. Post-invasion international sanctions had largely cut off the Western electronic components that Russia would need for mass manufacturing drones. One study from back in 2022 that looked at 27 Russian systems found that they ran on a mishmash of no fewer than 450 foreign components. The overwhelming majority were from the US, with a healthy amount from Europe as well. In short, as the 3-day special military operation evolved into a multi-year quagmire, Moscow realized it desperately needed mass-produced, affordable, long-range weapons to continue the fight. Luckily for Putin, and unluckily for Ukraine's civilians, the Islamic Republic by 2022 had perfected such a drone, the Shahed. Dumb, low-tech, but extremely cheap and able to devastate any target they hit, Shaheds have since proven to be the gold standard of one-way attack drones. And Iran was all too happy to lend a few boatloads to their friend in the north, and shipments began in the summer of 2022, most of which sailed through the Caspian Sea. Again, completely enclosed body of water. That's going to be a recurring theme here, because there was basically nothing the international community could do. It wasn't just drones, though. A 2023 report by the Wall Street Journal outlined that more than 300,000 artillery shells and over 1 million rounds of ammunition had been shipped from Iran to Russia. Keep in mind, at that time, Russian forces were in the midst of a severe ammunition shortage. The leader of the Wagner Group had just gone viral in his now legendary clip yelling, "Where's the ammunition?" and claiming Moscow's army chiefs will go to hell for not sending enough. But while Russia is no longer suffering ammo shortages and has long since started manufacturing at scale its own Shahed knockoff,
Now that they now have got Shaheds in there.
And the partnership between Tehran
Oh,
and
hi,
Moscow has
baby.
continued to grow. Aside from
I didn't see you there. I've been focused on measuring out how much more wax I think I can pour into the
badly needed. Decades of figuring out how to operate despite whatever Washington and Brussels can throw.
in here once some of
Iran
that
built
melts.
the entirety of its drone program under some of the most intense sanctions programs the world has ever seen, save for perhaps North Korea. They knew how to source, smuggle, and substitute their way around embargoes. Against this backdrop, the Ukrainian attack on Saturday starts to make a bit more sense. From Kiev's perspective, Iran is not a neutral actor, but one materially supporting the nation bombarding Ukrainian cities. And if Russia can use that logic to justify arson attacks on warehouses in Europe, well, why can't Kiev do the same to those supplying Moscow? All of which is why Ukraine's ambassador to Israel, Yevgen Kornachuk, didn't hold back when he addressed international media on the matter. He dismissed Tehran's insistence that the targeted ship was carrying exclusively civilian goods and declared that the war against Iran was effectively the same war as the one against Russia, that they were merely standing on different sides of the same evil axis. President Zelensky more or less made the same
I don't think I'm going to overfill it.
Sky News that by arming Moscow to the teeth year after year, Iran had effectively been at war with Ukraine the entire time. If that's the case, and it really is Ukraine versus Russia and Iran, that means that Washington might have found a newfound ally, one the White House under Trump just spent roughly a year and a half belittling and bullying. And more importantly, an ally that has some badly needed expertise. A new alliance. So when it comes to the relationship between Zelensky and Trump, things haven't exactly been cozy. Shortly after Trump took office, there was that now infamous White House press conference where Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance berated and publicly humiliated the Ukrainian leader. This was followed by a brief intelligence cutoff which caused havoc for Ukraine's troops. Pressure from America to sign a peace deal that basically amounted to giving in to Russian demands, an end to military and financial aid, and open attempts by the White House to meddle in the Hungarian elections to prop up longtime Ukraine foe Viktor Orban. Basically, Trump and his acolytes have spent the last 18 months acting as if Ukraine's unwillingness to lie down and submit to a quote-unquote great power like Russia was an affront to God. It's an attitude born of Trump's apparently sincere conviction that Ukraine doesn't have any cards. But that attitude may be changing now, and it's all due to Kiev demonstrating that it still has one incredibly powerful card up its sleeve: the ace of spades, known as drone technology. Since the war with Iran kicked off 5 months ago, Tehran has held nothing back in terms of demonstrating just how sophisticated its drone program has become. American bases, Gulf partners, and Israel have all come under a relentless barrage of incoming fire. Washington's response has largely been to use old-school interceptors like Patriots to shoot the drones down. They work, for the most part, but they're expensive as hell and take well over a year to replace. Back in the days of the biggest threat being expensive intercontinental ballistic missiles, this made sense. The enemy shoots 5 at you, you shoot them down, and then return fire. We're now living in a different world, though. At the absolute peak of its bombing campaign in May this year, Russia threw more than 8,000 Shahed-type drones at Ukrainian cities, according to Ukrainian Air Force data. Iran, for its part, was averaging 700 launches a day at the start of Operation Epic Fury, though this did fall dramatically through Washington and Jerusalem's joint bombing campaign targeting launch sites. In this brave new world, using interceptors like the Patriot PAC-3 that cost somewhere in the vicinity of £4 million to shoot down a $50,000 drone is an economic loser, and Washington is finally starting to wake up to the fact
how's your
that
client
it can't
doing?
keep fighting like this forever. Trump reportedly cancelled a stepped-up campaign against Iran in recent days for precisely this reason. Ukraine hasn't entirely solved the issue of drone warfare, but they have become the global experts on the matter, shooting down around 90% or more of incoming drones. All of this without using super expensive interceptors, instead relying on their own domestically produced counter-drones. The remarkable thing is that they're not trying to keep this technology to themselves. They've been willing to share it with the wider world. While the US did take them up on the offer back in March, it was rather limited in scope, especially compared with the wider Gulf region. Kiev dispatched some 230 counter-drone specialists to Jordan, Qatar, the Emirates, Saudi Arabia, and Kuwait. Remember, this is a country that's still in an active, ongoing, hot war with Russia and coming under fire on a near daily basis, offering to help out nations that have maintained cordial ties with Moscow. That the Gulf states were willing to embrace Ukraine's technology and likely pay through the nose for it shows just how much the Iran war has changed their calculations. The timing of all of this is difficult to overlook, too. Zelensky is set to meet with President Trump later today in the Oval Office, and unlike the first time, with that shouting match, he's in a significantly stronger position now, especially in terms of being able to offer Trump something that he actually wants. The two are reportedly closing in on a deal to start co-producing drones, and given how the wider war with Iran has been going for both the US and the Gulf states, Trump might be set to finally come around to the idea that backing Ukraine is a potential win-win. That drone deal isn't the only thing Zelensky is bringing with him either. The intelligence that Kiev has been gathering on how Moscow has been helping Iran target US forces in the Gulf, while not exactly a surprise for Washington, will doubtlessly be worth something too. For the first time, who should be thanking who in the Oval Office is a genuine open question. But while being able to negotiate with Trump from a position of strength is great for Ukraine, there remain dangers ahead. In a parallel timeline, Putin's unprovoked invasion of Ukraine could very well have been the trigger for World War III. Had Kiev fallen in 3 days, the Kremlin, drunk on success, may well have tried to roll further west. First Moldova, but then maybe the NATO nations in the Baltics. While that doomsday scenario did not happen, it doesn't mean that a wider war is off the table, one in which different theaters in the Middle East and Eastern Europe start to merge. One in which a third, Asian theater, could open up around Taiwan or on the Korean Peninsula at any time.
Do you think we're in
World War II only became truly global,
like
separate conflicts,
the late 1930s, where Europe was at war and America sitting outside of it? You think we're in the middle, like the beginning?
Modern wars to merge. Rather,
Pre-years of World War III, because I
surface
kind of
side
do.
of all the ways that Tehran's ties with Moscow have already caused these conflicts to become deeply entwined. Yet the fact that the boundaries between two of the most significant conflicts on Earth are starting to blur should worry us all. As we said at the start, the rest of 2026 is likely to be a very bumpy ride. Thank you for watching.
What's gonna come on next? What's gonna come on next?
On February 4th, 2017, WikiLeaks posted this photo of Svalbard's seed vault with a question: what is Vault 7? Later the same day, another tweet, this time with an archival photo of stolen Nazi gold. Where is Vault 7? And finally, when is Vault 7? With a photo of a jet engine. People went wild. You do not show a jet engine on the internet expecting everyone to stay calm. Guesses ranged from WikiLeaks confirming a conspiracy behind 9/11 to unmasking a shadow government or an extinction-level event. The truth was, of course, a bit more reasonable. WikiLeaks is, or maybe was, a media organization founded on the premise of publishing secret or otherwise restricted materials. At its head was Julian Assange, a hacker from Australia. Think of him what you want, but the guy has a flair for some artistry. Every leak on the site was published with build-up specifically designed to rile up the audience. The payoff wasn't far away. In a few days, WikiLeaks published a teaser story about America's Central Intelligence Agency hacking France, a taste of what's to come. Vault 7 wasn't about shadow governments. It was about the Central Intelligence Agency and its dirty deeds. The public was primed. On March 7, 2017, the first batch of the actual leak was posted.
Breaking news. The CIA has lost control of the majority of its hacking arsenal, which could fall into the wrong hands around the world.
It was cryptically dubbed Year Zero and contained over 8,700 files. A press release was there too, editorializing some highlights. It went all the way. These files, it said, documented the entire hacking capacity of the CIA. The leaked documents came from CIA's arguably most powerful hacking unit, the Operations Support Branch, OSB. It cataloged everything the OSB was doing, all the tools, projects, and other points of interest relating to its offensive capabilities. The tools were from 2013 to 2016. The descriptions weren't very user-friendly, of course. They were intended for the agency's hackers and executives. Some were lengthy write-ups and explanations. Others contained only short notes or links to third-party research. Yet other documents were more elaborate. They had proof of concepts for advanced hacking techniques or entire user guides for penetration tools. What could have been breached with these? Well, everything. Windows, Android, macOS, Linux, even Solaris operating system. In theory, almost every computer and smartphone in the world. There was documentation of Dare Start, a backdoor the CIA just adapted to work on OS X Mavericks. Gerfalcon, a tool to steal passwords from Linux machines. Cascade. We actually don't know what it did, but whatever that was, the CIA was teaching it to defeat the most popular antiviruses. These tools, and hundreds of others. WikiLeaks and the media presented this as proof that the CIA can hack everything and everybody, that its reach is boundless and its tentacles are unstoppable. Scary stuff, right? People behind the leak, in WikiLeaks and everywhere else, felt that way too, and they wanted to spark a debate about the ethics of having such power. The release generously quoted the source of the leak, an insider from the CIA, a shadowy figure who, of course, wanted to remain anonymous. Remember, this was just a few years after the most famous whistleblower story in history, Edward Snowden. He shared thousands of documents of the National Security Agency, disclosing how the NSA basically runs a worldwide surveillance network with little oversight or accountability. Vault 7's leaker wanted to show that the CIA was no better, or perhaps even worse, because its surveillance arsenal was no longer in its control.
According to WikiLeaks, the CIA has lost control of the majority of its cyber weapons, this arsenal of cyber weapons that it has.
That's
Things
scary.
like malware, viruses, Trojans, and various remote control systems.
The release claimed that all the leaked files were freely and unlawfully shared among all kinds of government hackers and contractors, used far beyond their intended purpose. Was this true? Well, it's complicated. Not everything in the story was what it seemed, and not everybody involved in it was honest. It's a crucial point that we can't avoid. We've looked through the files, and the reporting on them, the investigations that have been conducted later, and the fallout in the media. And with a high level of confidence, we can say that there's a lot of BS in it. A lot. WikiLeaks exaggerated some of the things that are in the files. The media exaggerated them further, and the CIA added its own spin to it too. We could have done this video the usual YouTube way, regurgitate whatever other people said, slap some AI-generated visuals on top of it, and call it a day. But we didn't. We did our homework. Because we have a team of researchers and scriptwriters and editors and producers, and even one veteran voice artist who does such a good job, everybody routinely confuses him for AI. Yeah, guys, I can't figure this out. Is this a compliment or a roast? Anyway, we're a human-first team, and we want to stay that way. We're not against AI, though, not at all, because we know that there are great AI tools that work very well for the tasks they're designed for. Like this video's sponsor, One.com. Here's the thing. Vibe-coded websites sometimes get a bad rap, because the people who do them don't use the right tools and don't know what they're doing. Believe us, we actually vibe-coded a website for an Easter egg in one of our previous videos. We used ChatGPT for it. It was bad. One.com is a platform that's designed to make an actual working website that looks and works like a real website should. And not only that, it's a one-stop shop for basically the entire online presence you might need, like the website, the eShop, email, domain, hosting, and all the business tools, already connected. As you can see, AI assistance with web design is just a part of the package, but what an assistant it is. One.com's AI is called Ada, and she's designed to do it all in one go. You tell her what you need, and she does it for you. Setting up your online presence takes minutes, not weeks, and you can spend your time doing things you really have to do, like deep diving into leaked documents of your favorite intelligence agency. One.com is really how AI services should be, so if you're interested in giving them a try, use the link in the description and get 75% off by using code CybernewsAdaAI. Thanks again to One.com for sponsoring today's video. Now back to the BS. If you recall how the leak was covered in the media, you probably remember two of its nastiest bits: that the CIA can spy on you through your TV and hijack your car to crash it. Public outcry to that was massive. Everybody who owns a TV or a car could connect these revelations to their own fears. But both of these claims were incredibly exaggerated, courtesy of Assange's flair for artistry. Take Weeping Angel, a framework the media presented as the CIA's way to spy on you through a smart TV. Most reporting ignored the fact that it only worked on select models of older Samsungs, and that it required direct physical access. To use it, the CIA had to pick a target with a particular model of a TV, and slip an agent into the room to tinker with it. Not a single thing in the leak hinted at Weeping Angel being a blanket surveillance tool. Blanket surveillance was the NSA's job, not the CIA's. The car crashing claim was even more ridiculous. In the entire leak, vehicle hacking was mentioned only once, in some meeting notes. Somebody noted that vehicle systems are a promising line of work, and that the CIA still hasn't looked into that. So the leak didn't say that the CIA could assassinate people by hacking their cars. In fact, it said exactly the opposite. All of this reporting didn't sit well with the CIA. Internally, the agency was in turmoil. When it came to speaking to the public, for the most part, it refused to confirm or deny, though. But somebody at the agency
I haven't heard from
probably
him
felt
on
that
his
enough
watch
is enough
either.
and decided to
He might
throw
have
a
let
bit
it
of their own
die.
BS into the fire.
I only heard about him through
Some
Amber's
CIA
phone,
officials
and they're
went
sending
on
me
record
pictures.
and said that they were actually aware of the leak a year in advance. A whole year. Of course, how couldn't they be? That's the CIA we're talking about. It controls everything, right? And that was a lie. Thanks to unclassified bits of an internal investigation, we know that the agency had no idea about the documents getting copied, and the WikiLeaks announcement caught it completely off guard. On that topic, WikiLeaks claimed that the CIA lost control of the documents and that they were widely shared all over the place before ending up in the public. That was also not true. All evidence points to the OSB keeping a tight grip on its arsenal. The whole unit worked in what was basically a bunker, cut off from the outside world. OSB was very small, very secret, and very insulated. That was actually one of the reasons nobody noticed the theft that occurred. And
I will.
it was by
Give me
far
1
not
second.
the only CIA unit engaged
They were
in
about
hacking.
projects he's
We know
doing
that
for
a
fair.
fact. WikiLeaks claimed that Vault 7 represents the CIA's entire hacking arsenal was also a massive stretch. The CIA had an entire center for cyber intelligence, and the OSB wasn't important, but by far not the only part of it. All these exaggerations and lies may make it sound like Vault 7 wasn't that big of a deal, but that would be a huge mistake. The OSB was crucial to the CIA. The leak left the agency in shambles, and the meat of the story was about hacking tools that did exist. Real exploits that could breach almost every personal computer and phone, and further dumps of Vault 7 only proved that. The second batch of documents was dropped on March 23rd. It was much smaller, but this time it had a theme. Apple. You know, this pointlessly persistent myth that Apple's products are impenetrable to hacking? Well,
There you go.
not when the CIA came knocking.
They're
Hello, I'm
coming.
Mac, and I am no one. Okay, PC, what do you... Listen, friend, it's not very safe for me right now, you understand? There's a lot of spyware out there. It sneaks into your system, follows you wherever you may go. In fact, take these.
No.
They'll keep you safe.
PC, honestly, I don't need them. Really, I'm good. I run Mac OS 10, so I don't have to worry about your spyware and viruses. You take them.
The agency had a whole suite of tools for opening pretty much any Apple product to date. A lot of those exploits were also persistent. You simply couldn't get rid of them, whatever you did. Take Sonic Screwdriver, for example. It was a piece of software designed to infect adapters for Macs. Connecting a compromised one would open a computer up.
Yeah, he's made
Then
baked
another
goods.
infection would put
She
an implant
said,
on the motherboard.
hold on. She said, chocolate pudding pie on Amish Rocky Road. The pie has 3 layers. He made his own cookie pie crust, not store-bought. The Amish bars is a 3-step process over like 3 hours. It involves separately doing a cake layer, letting that cool, doing a mellow layer, and then letting that cool, then a Rice Krispie type layer. That's what she said it was.
You could change your hard drive. You could reinstall your OS, and even some of the firmware. The implant would survive all of that, and it would keep the door open for the CIA to spy on you at its leisure. In fact, the OSB had a whole catalog of incredibly complicated spyware for specifically these cases. The agency could get files from your computer, read your passwords, configure your networks, basically enslave your computer without you knowing it. Of course, there was a limitation. Just like the Samsung TVs, a lot of the CIA's Apple malware had to be installed physically. The O in OSB wasn't there just for show. The hackers in this branch were supporting other operations the CIA was running. Every piece of their malware was basically an artisan gadget designed for a particular spying operation. Like we already said, blanket surveillance was the NSA's job, not the CIA's. But this opened another can of worms. If the CIA wanted to install Sonic Screwdriver, It needed to have spies in Apple's supply chain. Did the CIA have spies in Apple's supply chain? Did it have spies in the supply chains of all the tech giants? Another scary thought. The tech giants ignored it, but they couldn't ignore the reports about vulnerabilities. Apple certainly couldn't. It did everything in its power to avoid responsibility, claiming that all the exploits were simply outdated. They were from years ago. It's 2017 after all. Those vulnerabilities are patched. No need to worry. Sure thing, Sherlock. All the tools in the leak were from 2013 to 2016. But if the CIA was able to crack the latest Apple devices back then, what's there to suggest that it can't?
I decided what I'm going to have
now?
before my meds, one of my milkshakes.
It came time for an even scarier dump. Marble Framework, the most impactful of all Vault 7 revelations. What was Marble? According to WikiLeaks, it was designed for one.
This is not...
What if Obi-Wan joined Anakin? Let's start the story
No,
on
I don't want
Mustafar.
to do a Star Wars one yet.
What if Anakin stayed on Umbara? During the Clone Wars, we witnessed one of the best arcs on Umbara.
If you ask the President of the United States how his country is doing on ammo, he'll be all too happy to tell you. Great. Better than great, even. The US has not just everything it needs, but everything it could need moving forward too. Believe me. And on some level he is right, the US military does own the largest and most sophisticated arsenal on the planet. Even though stockpiles might be depleted relative to where they were at the start of the war with Iran, the US is still number one. The trouble, though, is that even vast stockpiles, they're not infinite stockpiles. For the last 5 months, the US has been heavily reliant on extremely expensive interceptor systems to shoot down whatever Iran is throwing at them in the Gulf states. And yet Iran has continued to penetrate the US's systems, killing American forces and damaging Gulf countries alike. But the bigger problem seems to be one that has finally dawned on Washington, that the US can't keep up a sustained fight with Iran without seriously depleting its interceptor reserve. Add in the sheer financial cost of the bombing campaign so far, as well as the lives lost, and the question becomes one those leading the Pentagon never thought they'd have to ask. Just how long can the US afford to keep up this war? Today's video is sponsored by the good people over at Rec Watches. Look, I like watches. In fact, the first nice watch that I've owned was a Pilot watch by, I don't think I can name other brands here, but it was by a company that's famous for making pen knives. And I love that watch. My parents bought it for me when I must have been 16, 17, but unfortunately I lost along the way. It was 20 years ago, but I still wish I had it, which is why I'm excited to tell you about a new watch from Rec
melted
Watches.
down.
It's the Rec X4009.
It looks like veg oil
and it
when
looks
there's
like a
this
classic
much.
pilot's watch, but the more you learn about it, the more interesting it gets. It's a limited edition watch, made using aluminium from the original Spitfire Mark 1A X4009 aircraft, the one flown by Australian ace Pat Hughes during the Battle of Britain. Also, what's cool, they didn't have to tear up the plane to get a piece of it. It was only made from the original aluminium that couldn't be used during the aircraft's restoration. Rec got their hands on it and reforged it into the 6 o'clock subdial on the watch. So every watch has its own unique markings. It's on pre-order now, so I don't actually have my hands on it. But I know it's going to be good because I actually have one of their other watches. I've got the one made with a piece of the SR-71 Blackbird, and they loaned this to me. They were like, show it off, blah, 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 and then mail it back. And I was like, I don't want to mail it back. Can I have it? And they're like, dude, no, we already paid you for the advert. And I was like, can I buy it? And they were like, yeah, I mean, we're a company, you can buy it. I'm like, okay. So I bought it with my own money because I liked it that much. I'm probably going to buy one of these X4009s as well because it looks awesome. It reminds me of the watch I had when I was a kid. And I'll be very excited to have a piece of history on my wrist. Plus the crown guards, even the engraved rotor, all subtly reference different
I don't know,
parts of the
can you
Spitfire.
see?
There's no ugly graphics or anything like that.
Can you
It just
see
looks
like
beautiful.
how
You'll
it's
see a
got
picture
like
of
a
it on the screen
vegetable
now.
oil
It's a picture that
tint
really
to it?
sold me on it already. I'll be spending my own hard-earned money on it because they don't give me these fancy watches for free. Rec is currently offering 15% off the X4009 on pre-order, and you can get an additional 10% off by using the code WARFRONTS at checkout, which I'll also be doing myself. Thank you again to Rec Watches for sponsoring the video, and now back to it. Running dry. Now, at the time of recording, the US hasn't struck Iran in 5 days, although the US and the Saudis did just bomb Iran-linked militias in Iraq. But as far as bombs hitting Tehran's territory go, nothing. Now, for viewers who have been following this conflict and know just how often these two bounce around between shooting each other and restraint, this probably sounds like it's not even worth covering. Indeed, there have been so many rounds of back and forth between obliterating Iran and they're desperate to make a deal that they're blurring together even for us. This one, however, is noteworthy because if recent reporting in the Wall Street Journal is to be believed, the US was actually preparing to ramp up their campaign and should have been in the midst of carrying it out as we speak today in late July. The reason Washington pulled back, according to the report, wasn't any last-minute deal reached with Tehran. On the contrary, one of the reasons Trump decided to postpone the escalation was because of a shortage of interceptors. Some headlines have gone so far as to say the US has run out of missiles, and while that's likely an exaggeration, it's at least directionally true in terms of its ability to wage a long-term campaign against the Islamic Republic. Washington has, of course, been quick to deny that it's short on interceptors at all. Trump repeatedly told reporters that the US has more munitions than anyone in the world and a good deal more than it needs. Ambassador to the United Nations Mike Waltz joined in, dismissing the whole thing as a bunch of nonsense. The thing is, both of them may well believe it too. Earlier this month, reports emerged of rumors that the Pentagon had been quietly concealing the scale of the shortfall from the White House, partially under the belief that some of the administration would rather not be told. One insider described a culture of intimidation based on a perception that passing along bad news doesn't seem to end well for anybody. Following that report, Republican Senator Tom Tillis went public, blasting Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, saying that he had lost confidence in him over his handling of the Iran war. All this has been weighing on some of the top military leaders in the States too. General Dan Kane, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, reportedly warned the administration that large-scale combat would draw US Central Command's interceptor stocks down to risky levels. When it comes to assessing which side is telling the truth here, though, it's an uphill battle for channels like us with no contacts deep in the Pentagon and still no invite to the Signal group chat. The exact numbers of high-tech interceptors are classified, and apparently telling YouTubers state secrets is apparently frowned upon. Disappointing, we know. All that aside, this doesn't mean we don't have anything to run on. The question of how many interceptors, missiles, and general explodey things the US has been shooting off has been the focus of just about every major foreign policy think tank since the Iran war started, and what they found is alarming. Perhaps the most thorough examination came from the Center for Strategic and International Studies back in April after the first ceasefire was reached, which found that Washington shot about 1,000 Tomahawk missiles, or somewhere around 30% of its stockpiles, not from the Middle East, but globally during the preceding 39 days of conflict. If 30% sounds bad, just you wait. That number goes up to at least 45% of its precision strike missiles. Importantly for the interceptor angle, it spikes to nearly half of its Patriot supplies and more than half of its THAAD supplies. Those last two, by the way, are the most important thing in the arsenal because they're what stands between hostile advanced missiles and US bases, not just from Iran, but globally. Patriots handle the lower altitude stuff, while THAAD catches the higher altitude missiles on their way back down to their targets, and together they make up the backbone of Washington's global air
28 grams.
Now, it's not exactly breaking news that ammunition gets used in wars, nor that it takes time to resupply once they're done. That is par for the course. What is so concerning here is the time frame to actually build this supply back up, because especially when it comes to the more advanced ones like THAAD and the PAC-3 model Patriot Interceptor, they're not exactly rolling off the production line en masse. The administration has been pressuring US defense contractors to seriously up their game in terms of production, but there's only so much that can be fast-tracked. Even considering the expanded contracts reached last month to boost THAAD production to 400 units a year,
grams was that?
we're still looking at each of these being in short supply through 2029 at the earliest. And keep in mind, those estimates are running off where supplies stand as of today, not in the aftermath of another expanded campaign against the Islamic Republic. Those headlines that the US is running out of missiles to fight this war against Iran are starting to look a bit less dramatic now, aren't they? But it's not just stockpiles that are being drained. The conflict is also costing the American taxpayer more than the Pentagon would like to admit. Now, before we get into that bill, a quick breather to let you know about our little side quest. Regular viewers, you'll already know the drill. Front.co is our subscriber site for people who want to get really into the weeds about major conflicts. Every week we publish 2 exclusive videos and 3 expert-written articles covering our world's biggest flashpoints. And you better believe that includes the ongoing chaos in Iran and the wider Middle East. Just to give you an idea of what we offer, we've recently covered everything from whether the Gulf states can defend themselves without America to what role the Houthis are playing in the current conflict. Or, if that's not enough to whet your appetite, there's also our weekly podcast, the Middle East Roundtable, where our
Alexa, set 2-minute timer.
Discuss all things related to the conflict, plus whatever may be happening in Lebanon, Gaza, or elsewhere in the region. Look, if you like what we do here on the main channel, you'll probably love Fronts. A subscription is just $5 a month and it helps support all the work that we do here. That's Fronts.co, check it out. And now back to the United States' growing Iran war bill. The bill comes due. In the UK, there's one letter that haunted the Labour Party for the better part of a decade. When they lost power in 2010, the outgoing Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Liam Byrne, left a letter behind for whichever incoming Tory inherited the job, and it read, in full, "I'm afraid there is no money. Kind regards, and good luck." Now, it was meant as a joke, but the Tories had an absolute field day with it. They put it on campaign leaflets for literally over a decade. Byrne spent all that time apologizing for it, but has never really lived it down. If you're wondering what on earth that piece of British political trivia has to do with the Iran conflict, well, it's starting to look like something similar could be playing out inside the US as well, though we're not betting on anyone in the administration actually confessing to it on paper. This time, though, it's the cost of the Iran war and Washington's ability to keep funneling enough cash to keep up the campaign that's the issue. Earlier this month, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth told the Senate Appropriations Committee that the total cost of the campaign clocks in at $37.5 billion. This number has been received pretty skeptically by Congress and those outside the administration more generally. Professor Linda Bilmes of Harvard University, who quite literally wrote the book on the total cost of the war in Iraq, said that we should consider the $37.5 billion figure as the tip of the iceberg, and noted that most members of Congress don't believe it's accurate. Separate analysis by The Telegraph has put the real cost of the war to the US's economy at $151.3 billion, over 4 times the number Hegseth is saying. That's no small chunk of change, but this is also the United States that we're talking about here. They currently spend more than $1 trillion with a T on defense each year, so this isn't exactly a doomsday situation. That said, things will start to get ugly.
Now we bring the temp down to 135.
If costs continue at their current pace, the bill could reach $311.3 billion by the end of the year. For comparison, the Afghanistan war cost an estimated $2.26 trillion. Spread evenly across 20 years, that works out to roughly $47 billion for any 5-month period. Now, we obviously need to be careful with such comparisons, not least because these figures are not adjusted for inflation. In today's money, the 5-month Afghanistan average would be at least $58 billion and probably higher if you did a full year-by-year adjustment. But still, $58 billion is a lot cheaper than the Telegraph's estimate of $151.3 billion. Or, to put it in simple terms, the Iran war is burning through money like the K Foundation on steroids. And yes, well done to the single person in the audience who got that reference. Inside the Pentagon itself, there seems to be growing concern about the financial sustainability of all of this. The reason that Hegseth was sitting before the Senate Appropriations Committee in the first place was because the administration was asking for an emergency funding package on top of the already enacted 2026 defense budget. Back in June, the White House sent a formal request for an additional $87.6 billion, most of which would be directed to the Pentagon, and just last week, the House passed a budget resolution allocating $70 billion to prop up the war effort. It stalled since Congress is currently on summer recess, and yes, they get a summer recess, but it will almost certainly be front and center upon their return. Now, we do want to be clear that the actual chance that the US simply runs out of money is zero. The Treasury can borrow more or less whatever it decides to issue, so the real constraint is political. Somebody in Congress has to actually vote for the money to be spent on an unpopular war. On the flip side, while loudly complaining about various price tags can certainly score political points during initial rounds of legislative back and forth, actually cutting off funding to troops who are currently under fire isn't a vote anyone wants their name attached to. The supplemental may get delayed, trimmed, or picked apart, but the odds of it being killed outright are slim. Once they do get that funding, though, things are starting to look as though they'll be funneling it into more sustainable systems. New solutions. By this point in the war, it's pretty clear that whatever Trump and Netanyahu thought that they'd be getting from their respective operations against the Islamic Republic aren't coming, at least not anytime soon. Iran has essentially mastered the art of asymmetric warfare, as is being demonstrated through their continuous attacks on shipping in the Strait of Hormuz, as well as strikes on Gulf countries that have proven to be stubbornly difficult for the US to defend against. We here at Warfronts have been saying from nearly the outset of Operation Epic Fury that the rate at which the US is burning through interceptors is unsustainable. We even dedicated a whole episode to it back in April. The sole bright spot is that today, in July, the US does finally seem to be pivoting towards cheaper, more scalable solutions for shooting down Iranian
is Joel,
drones.
technically.
This pivot seems to be
And
arriving
so is Gage.
in a few different forms. The first is the Coyote Counter Unmanned
Can you
Aircraft
see the
System,
silver?
or CUAS for short. Recently classified information from the US Army revealed that they were actually active throughout the early days of Operation Epic Fury. They didn't declassify exactly how many were used, so we don't have the exact ratio in terms of successful shootdowns, but we do know that they logged over 600 combat intercepts of various Iranian drone systems inbound to Gulf states. The president of Raytheon's Land and Air Defense Systems, Tom LaLiberty, said that his company has tripled Coyote production over the past year and plans to double output from there in light of the war with Iran. Once they get there, Raytheon will be able to churn out somewhere around 300 Coyotes a month. Now, that's not exactly going to break any world records, considering that Russia is able to produce somewhere between 3,000 and 5,000 each month of their equivalent of Iran's Shahed drones, the Geran 2. But it is a significant step up from just a few dozen Patriots a month. Critically, these missiles are also a hell of a lot cheaper than their alternatives. They're estimated to clock in
Nicole's
around
just busy.
instead of the roughly $4
hard to get people over here.
that it takes to build a PAC-3 Patriot. The second part of the pivot here comes by way of the MERIP system. Unlike Coyotes, which are missiles, think big, heavy, and still pretty expensive, MERIPs are the US's entrance to the drone interceptor game. They're a super lightweight and portable interceptor that, once up in the air, can hunt on their own without manual control. They're equipped with tracking via radar, thermal signatures, or by radio frequencies that other drones emit, and they fly towards whatever they detect with their 2-kilogram fragmentation warhead on board and go boom. Iran has a long track record of jamming and spoofing GPS across the Gulf, which makes an interceptor that homes in on the target itself a serious threat. The system actually earned its combat stripes not against Iran, but on the battlefield in Ukraine. They were designed by an American company working alongside the former CEO of Google, Eric Schmidt, specifically to shoot down Shahed drones. Ukrainian crews began flying them back in the summer of 2024, and they've done well enough that Poland and Romania have both taken them on to shore up NATO's eastern flank against increasing Russian drone attacks.
Nice.
While any sort of interceptor that can be
mass-produced
would be welcome relief for Washington at this point, the price of these MERIPs is really a selling point, going for reportedly as little as $15,000 apiece, with expectations that the price could fall even further as production really ramps up. Washington
right now we're doing clean linen candles.
About a week after
they're going to go up for sale on our Etsy.
Again, planning has reportedly sent
right here are
10,000 to the region since.
They're ready. I've got a
that all the good vibes around this
funnel ready. I've got to get it down to
too little, too late.
135.
Prior to the bombing campaign that began on February the 28th, the United States knew that Iran was a leading producer of one-way attack drones. Just as the Pentagon knew there was a serious possibility that the Iranians would respond to the bombing by closing the Strait of Hormuz. Any halfway competent war planner would have said something like, hey, if we're really gonna go up against a nation that stockpiles crazy amounts of cheap drones, shouldn't we have gigantic warehouses of these MEROPS things ready to go? But that's been the administration's entire approach to this war in general. Going in without a plan and then doing a surprised Pikachu face when Iran does the exact thing that every analyst on Earth warned that it would do. And these American drone developments may simply be solving an old problem. A US official told The Intercept earlier this week that Iran has taken a leaf out of Russia's book and begun using a combination of both drones and more advanced ballistic missiles flown in tandem, which reiterates the need for a robust stockpile of Patriots and THAADs, while also underscoring the importance of figuring out how to scale a counter-drone game as soon as possible. The problem, in other words, is evolving faster than the solution, and the gap between the two is where American soldiers are currently standing. To date, 18 have been killed, and if the last few weeks are any indication, any sustained conflict with Iran means that number has more room to run. Thank you for watching.
Ooh, that smells so good.
What if Anakin stayed on Umbara? During the Clone Wars, we witness one of the best arcs on Umbara when Anakin is called back to Coruscant and replaced with the infamous Pon Krell. Rex and the 501st quickly realize that Krell isn't who he claims to be. He's evil and wishes to see the Republic fall. But for 4 episodes, the clones are completely no match for the might of a Jedi, or rather a Sith. So what if, instead of Anakin being called back to Coruscant, he stayed on Umbara? Our story begins during the Battle of Umbara. Anakin, Rex, and the 501st had begun their assault on the Umbaran capital city after they withdrew from the Republic. As the battle comes to an end, the fabled Jedi Master Pon Krell exits an LAAT gunship and approaches them. Anakin is informed he's been called back to Coruscant on Jedi business. Now, originally, Anakin follows orders and leaves, but as we all know, Skywalker doesn't like following orders, so it's here where today's story is different from the original. As Krell tells him
now
to
we're
leave,
at
Anakin
temperature.
refuses, saying he won't leave
Gotta
his
get my
men
gloves
during battle.
on.
Krell was instantly agitated, but the Beastalisk couldn't do anything to sway the Chosen One's mind. Anakin and Rex contact the Jedi Council to ask why he's being called away from battle, but Windu and Yoda explain the order came from the Chancellor, not them. Anakin was very confused. Palpatine had never called him away during a campaign. Something must be wrong. He and Rex discussed whether Anakin should return to see what Palpatine wants, but ultimately, they decided it's better for Anakin to remain on Umbara. So Anakin stays, and he and Rex rejoin their men in the conflict. Hours pass, and quickly the clones are being thrown back into battle against the local Umbarans. Instantly, Anakin and Krell conflict on the best course of action. Anakin believes they should try flanking the Umbarans to surprise attack them, but Krell demands they send a battalion of clones to the center of No Man's Land to draw the Umbarans out of hiding and then eradicate them. But Anakin thought he was insane. That would only cost the lives of hundreds of his men. It goes completely against his training from Obi-Wan and the Jedi. But Krell was adamant, and at the end of the day, he was the superior ranked Jedi, and so his word was final, despite the clones being the 501st under Anakin's command. So just like the original, the clones are sent straight down the center path, but this time, Anakin goes with them. Krell immediately doesn't like Anakin. He believed he was too attached to the clones and their well-being. In the Beastalisk's mind, the clones are simply soldiers bred to fight, and bred to die. Whereas the Jedi commanders are superior, they're royalty compared to
those
the
are the
ants
first
in
2,
white
clean
clad
linen.
armor. As Anakin and Rex lead the 501st towards the Umbaran capital,
Now we'll pull
one
this
trooper
back
steps
up
on
to
a landmine,
190.
causing the ground to explode as dozens of Umbarans reveal themselves and fire upon them. Skywalker ignites his lightsaber as Rex fires his twin blasters towards the trees. Anakin screams for his men to stay united and protect one another. The fighting is chaos as dozens of clones fall in seconds. Krell
We're gonna do
watches from afar
300
with his
grams
fellow
that time. That
binoculars.
was a little
With
hard to
Anakin
control
there,
the
he
flow
begins
of.
deflecting several blaster bolts and protecting the clones. Within minutes, Anakin takes control over the battle and the 501st are able to overwhelm the Umbarans. Krell's rage begins to boil. This wasn't meant to happen. He sent the clones in there to die, just like they all should, but Anakin was ruining everything. Krell closed his eyes as he felt his anger wash throughout his body. At this point, Krell had distanced himself from the Jedi many months ago. He had abandoned their cause in favor of something else, the dark side. But he needed to prove to Dooku that he could be a Sith too, that he was worthy of being trained in the dark side for when the Sith eventually overthrew the Republic and the Jedi to rule the galaxy. All these thoughts flashed through the Beastalisk's mind. As he opened his eyes, his already yellow iris had sunk even deeper into an amber glow. Krell contacts Sergeant Oppo, who is leading the other squadron of clones waiting behind Rex's men, who were originally waiting to be called in as backup. But Krell tells him that Rex's men were completely overwhelmed by the Umbarans, who were now disguised in clone armor. He tells Oppo that they must eliminate all beings dressed in clone armor at once. Simultaneously, Krell contacts Rex and explains that another wave of Umbarans wearing clone armor is arriving from the east. Clones unknowingly begin firing upon each other. It was a massacre as hundreds of brothers gunned each other down. Even Anakin had his blade ignited as he deflected bolts back at those who he thought were Umbarans. However, very quickly, Anakin's senses begin to spasm as he thinks something isn't right. Rex to his left runs up over a dead Umbaran in clone armor, but as he takes his helmet off, the face of a clone trooper is revealed. Anakin and Rex gasp in horror. Krell has lied to them. They were fighting clones. Rex begins running through the battlefield.
Now we're back
screaming at
to
everyone
waiting
stop.
for it to melt
Finally,
down.
Krell enters the battlefield. Anakin leaves the 501st as he searches for the traitorous Jedi. As the purple haze of fog weakens, Anakin comes face to face with Krell. Skywalker initially questions why the clones fought each other, but when Krell was met with a slither of suspicion, the Basilisk ignited his twin double-bladed lightsabers and swung for the Chosen One. They clashed back and forth as Anakin tried to defend himself from the 4 blades coming straight at him. Krell was powerful, much like Grievous in that regard, as his speed with multiple sabers become unparalleled. But Anakin tried to remain calm as he locked their blades and finally leaped back to create some distance between them. The Basilisk begins to laugh at the Chosen One, saying he's ignorant and does not yet understand the true nature of the Force. Anakin asks the One's Jedi why he turned to the dark side, to which Krell admits it's stronger, that is going to come out on top. Anakin scoffs in reaction, but Krell assures the Chosen One he's seen it in his visions. The Sith will rule the galaxy, and he intends to be on the better side of history. Anakin clenches his jaw as he tells the dark side user that he's wrong. Krell laughs, and he queries to Anakin whether he's ever felt the pull of the dark side. Anakin remains silent. He remembers Tatooine, he remembers his past, but he won't let this man get into his head. Krell begins to circle Anakin as he explains he knows all about the great Chosen One, how he grew up in slavery, was fostered off to a master who didn't truly want him, but felt obligated to do it because of his dying master's last wish. Anakin tells him to stop, but Krell continues to laugh. This was all too easy. Krell says he's read a file the Jedi kept in the restricted section. He knows that his mother died in his arms. The Basilisk shakes his head, saying it must have been hard to watch an attachment die. Surely that fills you with rage and anger. Anakin finally snaps, yelling at Krell to stop. The Chosen One flourishes his sapphire blade as he clashes against Krell's sabers. Krell was immediately placed on the defensive. Anakin swung with everything he had, using all his past trauma to lunge himself forward, just like Krell had told him to, just like Dooku would in another life. Perhaps he and Krell were similar after all. The Basilisk's face dropped when he realized that Anakin was displaying no emotion. He was using the dark side. Krell launches a whimsical counter to try and attack and get back on top, but it backfires, and Anakin drops Krell to the floor as he points his blade at his throat. Pong Krell surrenders and is arrested. Across the battlefield, Rex has managed to stop the fighting between the clones, and they all mourn the losses they faced. Anakin would lead them all as they broke into the Umbaran capital and took control of the city, which allowed Obi-Wan's 2/12 to arrive from the other side. Umbara was captured and placed back in the hands of the Republic. Anakin and the 501st returned to Coruscant. Anakin hated what he became that night. As he reflected, he remembered feeling so much anger. It reminded him of the night his mother died. He never wanted to feel that way again. When Anakin returned to Coruscant, he went to Palpatine's office, and it was here the Chosen One asked his mentor why he was trying to call him back to Coruscant whilst he was on Umbara. Palpatine was smooth and cunning. He simply told Anakin he was deeply concerned for his safety, assuming the father figure role as he places a hand on Anakin's shoulder. But Anakin was confused, saying he'd never done that before despite him always being away at battle. But Palpatine plays it off like the master manipulator he is. But even Anakin thought it was strange. After leaving Palpatine's office, Skywalker went to Yoda where he confided in the Jedi Grand Master about what happened on Umbara. He says that Krell got through to him. Yoda asked what he meant, and Anakin explained how he tapped into the dark side to defeat him. The Chosen One lowered his head, ashamed. He said he hated the person he was. He felt power, but too much power. When all he should have been doing was protecting his men, he suddenly felt the desire of violence. Yoda remained quiet as Anakin explained his feelings. But the Grand Master was troubled by this. If there was one person who can't submit himself to the dark side, it's Anakin. Yoda tells Skywalker he's already on a better path than Umbara because he opened up about this. He promised Anakin he will work with him to better control his emotions, but also not to be afraid to grow and harness his power. So from here, the war rages on across the galaxy, and Anakin works closely with Yoda. When Anakin was on the battlefield, he would keep Yoda updated with how he was feeling and the strength he was using to defeat his enemy.
And then we're
when
gonna
he was
get
back on Coruscant, he would meet with Yoda and they would work on things.
the next
Yoda
load
explained to Anakin
of
that he had so much raw power to learn how to use, but also not to become a spectacle to it. Yoda would give Anakin force-induced visions depicting various things, so Anakin could train how he reacts to different scenarios. He saw Obi-Wan killed, Ahsoka brutally hurt, and even Coruscant overrun by Separatist droids. Over time, Anakin's reaction became much more pragmatic than emotional. He focused on what was right in the situation compared to what he felt like he should be doing and experiencing. His training with Yoda culminated when Ahsoka was taken captive and hunted by Trandoshans on the moon Washkar. Anakin's initial reaction to losing his Padawan was pure rage and anger. This wasn't a game like he played with Yoda, but quickly, he closed his eyes and calmed his breathing as he recalled his training. He told himself his time would be better spent locating Ahsoka and not sitting here upset or concerned that she could be dead. That achieves nothing. So, over the following days, he takes the next best step until he and Rex find the Trandoshans and rescue her. When Anakin explained this mission to Yoda and his emotions throughout it, Yoda knew Anakin had his emotions under control now, and he didn't fear what Anakin might become anymore. The war continues for many more months, until eventually Coruscant is invaded by the Separatists and Chancellor Palpatine is taken captive. Anakin and Obi-Wan are sent to the Invisible Hand, where they fight and kill Dooku before rescuing Palpatine. Just
now
like
we're
the
waiting
original,
for
Anakin has visions of Padme dying, but he immediately responds better to them and doesn't react
the
impulsively.
wax
When
them out
Palpatine
down.
reveals himself
That's
as
300
Darth
grams
Sidious
of
to
wax.
Anakin, the Chosen One relied on his
And then
teachings
we'll-
from Yoda to not submit to Palpatine. He leaves the Chancellor's office, and this time, instead of telling Mace Windu, Anakin goes straight to the communications center at the temple and contacts Yoda on Kashyyyk. The Grand Master tells Skywalker to wait for him to return before he makes his move. 4 hours later, Yoda was back on Coruscant, and together, he and Yoda went to Palpatine's office to confront him. Together, they fight Palpatine. Sidious was furious that Anakin had gone to Yoda instead of telling someone like Windu how he'd anticipated. As they clashed across his office,
We're gonna do one more
Palpatine
load of
wondered
clean
where in his
linen.
plans had gone wrong with Anakin's
And then we're gonna
manipulations.
switch
He could
what
sense
we're
that
doing.
Skywalker wasn't tapping into the dark side, but was instead at the most peace he'd sensed him in months. This only enraged the Sith Lord, who fought with more speed and strength than he'd thought possible. He told Anakin that after he's done with him, he will go straight to Padme's apartment and kill her and the children. Anakin's jaw clenched, but Yoda stabilized him, telling him to remain in the present. Yoda leaped around Palpatine while Anakin kept his footing on the ground. They were in perfect synchronicity. Palpatine didn't understand. None of this made any sense. How were these two so well molded? As Yoda locked blades with Palpatine, Anakin sliced both of the Sith's wrists off. Palpatine screams in pain as he falls to the floor. It was over. They arrested him. As Palpatine was taken away in handcuffs, Yoda tells Skywalker he was very proud of him. Anakin thanks the Grand Master, but he can't help but mention the elephant in the room. He says what Palpatine said about Padme and their unborn child, but Yoda quickly interrupts. He said that without Anakin, they never would have defeated Palpatine. He also said he'd shown great courage and responsibility to control his emotions in the recent months. It's not uncommon for a Jedi to have a wife and family. He tells Anakin that Ki-Adi-Mundi has 4 wives and 7 children. Anakin had the approval from the council to go public with his marriage with Padme. Anakin was shocked, but he knew he wouldn't take this for granted. A few days later, Padme would go into labor and gave birth to twins, with both Obi-Wan and Ahsoka beside them. They were all very pleased. The children would join the Jedi Order when they were very young, along with Ahsoka, who rejoined after seeing the better path the Order was on after Palpatine's defeat and the end of the Clone Wars. As for Palpatine, he was placed in prison, and when he got there, the cell was positioned opposite Pong Krell. And so, because Anakin remained on Umbara, he was able to embark on a journey to control his emotions and bring balance to the Force. Anakin and Padme would live happily with their 2 Jedi children, who would keep peace for generations to come.
Hey guys, thanks for watching today's video. Let me know what you thought in the comments below. Now I see a lot of you enjoyed our May sale.
That was a
over at
pretty good
Fantasy
one.
Sabers, where with every order over $2.99 you get a free Chosen One
If you ask the President of the United States how his
Caleb.
country is doing on ammo, he'll be all too happy to tell you. Great. Better than great, even. The US has not...
Our story begins on Coruscant as Jedi Master Mace Windu is investigating a trail leading him to the hopeful discovery of Darth Sidious and his true identity. For the past few days, pieces have started to truly come together. While on one of the latest missions, in the Outer Rim Sieges, the Jedi infiltrated a base on Cato Neimoidia, and in his escape, Newt Gunray left behind his Mechno chair. At first, this seemed like nothing, but upon further investigation, Windu and a squad of clone troopers uncovered something that could change the tide of the war. Embedded in this chair was a secret channel that had a saved holo recording of Darth Sidious himself.
You still around,
it was
Caleb?
a hooded man, but it was impossible to figure out who it was. So Windu began further research into the chair, and it was revealed that it was created by the Limerge Company. There was only one Limerge building here on Coruscant. It was deep in the industrial sector, and underneath the building were a series of tunnels that led right back to the 500 Republica building, the home of the most influential politicians and workers in the entire Republic, including Supreme Chancellor Palpatine. So, using clone investigators, Mace Windu was able to uncover a series of footprints, but that was right when the attack on Coruscant came in. Mace was asked to join in on the fight, but as the attack came, Windu began to realize something. The Separatists were attacking Coruscant right as he was about to uncover the truth. This made Windu think that he was extremely close. So, while the attack got underway, Windu only continued his investigations. It took everything in him not to go out and help the Republic in this fight, but he knew this mission could potentially end the war. The Jedi suspected that Darth Sidious has infiltrated the Republic at its highest levels. Perhaps he's even gotten to Palpatine himself. Windu would still work with these clones, following the uncovered footprints until they led right into the suite of none other than Chancellor Palpatine. Windu had it. After all these years of trusting Palpatine, he found out that Palpatine has been playing him and the entire galaxy in his quest for power. Windu immediately contacted the Jedi who were protecting Palpatine, Shaak Ti to be specific, to be wary of him. But Windu would quickly hear back that it's too late. Palpatine has been captured by the Separatists. Windu shook his head. He didn't quite understand. Why would Palpatine purposely get himself captured? And then Mace asked the Jedi Temple who'd been called back to Coruscant to rescue Palpatine. The answer was exactly what Mace feared. Skywalker and Kenobi were on their way, and Mace wondered if this could be a trap for Skywalker. The Council has long been wary of Anakin and Palpatine's relationship. Mace always hated it, and he knew now that Anakin may be walking right into a trap set by the Sith. Meanwhile, out in hyperspace, Anakin, Obi-Wan, and their clone legions were approaching Coruscant when Mace Windu contacted them. Skywalker and Kenobi took the message, and Mace seemed even more serious than usual, which Anakin thought to be impossible. But today Mace told them the truth. Their investigations have led him to believe that Palpatine is Darth Sidious. He suspects that they're walking right into a trap designed to bring Anakin to the dark side. Anakin almost laughed. He told Windu this doesn't add up. Palpatine is a good man. He always has been. He trusts Palpatine as much as he trusts Obi-Wan. Windu noticed Obi-Wan flinch a bit at this remark, and Windu said that he's not 100% certain, but he wants the two of them to be on guard the entire time. Their mission is to rescue Palpatine, but if they get any sort of hint that he is a Sith Lord, do not be afraid to act. The message ended, and Anakin just stood up, saying he was going to the hangar. Obi-Wan could feel Anakin's unease in the Force. For as much as his former Padawan wanted this report to be completely false, Obi-Wan feared it may be true, and he feared that Anakin knew it may be true. So, he too would head down to the hangar, preparing to follow Anakin into the space battle. Sometime later, Dooku and Palpatine were looking out at the battle playing outside of the Invisible Hand Spire, as Palpatine said that Anakin and Obi-Wan will be here soon, and Anakin's path into the dark side will truly begin. As far as Dooku knew, the plan was to turn Anakin and soon have him lead the coming Sith army, while Sidious and Dooku rule the Empire together. Of course, Dooku was being played. The plan was always to abandon him for Anakin, and as Sidious sensed the two Jedi land in the ship and begin their approach, he told Dooku to go and wait for them to arrive. Skywalker and Kenobi would
You're okay,
the
baby.
Invisible Hand after fighting through perhaps the largest battle of the war, and as they climbed through the ship, Obi-Wan could sense Anakin's unease growing, and eventually Obi-Wan confronted Anakin on it, saying that perhaps Windu was right. It would line up with the direction of this war, and it's no secret that Anakin and Palpatine are closer than any Jedi should be with the Chancellor. Anakin then stopped in his tracks, turning to face Obi-Wan, saying that he knows it makes sense. Anakin told Obi-Wan they need to split up. If this is truly a trap meant to turn him to the dark side, then the best way to do that would be by killing Obi-Wan. The Jedi Master remembered how Anakin descended down a dark path when Obi-Wan faked his death during the war, so he knew Anakin was right. But splitting up was not a risk that Obi-Wan wanted to take. He couldn't let his former student just walk alone into a room with 2 Sith Lords. But Anakin begged Obi-Wan to trust him. He has to handle this. Meanwhile, Obi-Wan will have time to go and confront Grievous. If he can defeat Grievous, and if Anakin is successful, then they will have victory here today, not just for this battle, but for the entire war. Obi-Wan looked into Anakin's serious eyes, and behind them, he saw the boy from Tatooine, all grown up, leading the final mission of a galactic war, and he firmly told Anakin he is the chosen one, he believes in him, and they would say goodbye, separating for now. Obi-Wan tried to get to the command bridge, while Anakin got into the elevator for the spire, and as the doors opened, he would see Chancellor Palpatine sitting in a chair near the large windows. Despite the raging battle outside, the spire was eerily quiet. As Anakin descended the steps, Palpatine turned, his face etched with fake relief, and then he curiously asked where Kenobi was. Anakin looked away, faking this, saying that Obi-Wan didn't make it. Palpatine bowed his head in fake sadness, saying he is so sorry, and then Dooku emerged. But before Dooku could flip off of the balcony, Anakin's plan went into motion. He leapt into the air. Flying at Dooku, lightsaber ignited. He cut down the super battle droids, then pointed his blade at Dooku. Dooku smiled, igniting his red saber, and the two of them circled each other, high up on the balcony. Dooku noted to himself that there was something off with Anakin. Something has changed. Anakin moved in, swinging at Dooku as the two of them clashed their blades together. They stayed high up on this balcony, out of range of Palpatine's ears. Anakin swung hard, locking sabers with Dooku, and before Dooku could get into a battle rhythm, Anakin made sure his back was to Palpatine, and he asked Dooku a simple question. Is it him? Is Palpatine Darth Sidious? And Dooku's reaction gave Anakin the answer he was looking for. The truth threatened to break Anakin. His friend, a man he saw like a father, never told him the truth. He was always a liar, responsible for Ahsoka leaving the Order. He tried to have Padme killed so many times. It was Palpatine's fault that Anakin spent so many months away from his wife. Instead of letting this break him, Anakin decided to use it as fuel. He kicked Dooku square in the chest, pushing him into the elevator, and Anakin got back into it as well, closing the door behind him. He now had Dooku alone, in extremely close quarters. Back in the spire,
baby.
Palpatine was all alone. He honestly wasn't sure what to do. If he just escaped, Anakin would know this was all fabricated. Little did Palpatine know, Anakin knew everything. But Palpatine would just stay put for now.
For now, we'll move that.
The truth. In the elevator, Dooku and Anakin circled each other, an understanding coming between them as Dooku simply asked how he found out. Anakin said it's irrelevant. He told Dooku his entire ideology is a scam. He claims to be the savior of the galaxy, getting rid of corruption, and all the while, he's the one putting the most corrupt man in the galaxy into a greater role. Dooku angrily replied that Anakin's view of the galaxy is so simple, good and evil, no in between. And Dooku continued, saying he knows what he does is wrong. He has sacrificed everything to bring forth a galaxy free of greed and corruption. He yelled at Anakin that the Jedi Order is blinded by their own arrogance. There is no Jedi that sees the truth about this galaxy. And Anakin raised his own voice now, yelling at Dooku that he could have been that Jedi by his side. Together, they could have fixed the Order. Dooku noticed Anakin begin to tear up as he now said that Qui-Gon could have been that Jedi. The three of them, along with Obi-Wan, they could have saved the Republic from the Sith. They could have brought the Jedi into a greater era, but Dooku chose war. He chose to end Qui-Gon's life instead of save him on Naboo. And then Anakin told Dooku it's not too late. He claims the Jedi are blind, and yet he cannot see that Sidious intends to discard of him. Dooku shook his head, saying it's not true. The Sith plan is to rule together. He is the one who's been trying to recruit Obi-Wan to join them. He sees Anakin's vision, but it was never possible with the Jedi. The way of the Sith is the only way. Anakin told Dooku he knows that's not true deep down. He knows deep down that Sidious intends to replace him. They can easily prove it together. And Dooku, for the first time in over a decade, would allow his belief in Sidious to waver. Part of him realized that Anakin may be telling the truth. So he would look Anakin in the eyes, truly seeing him. Seeing his fire, his passion, his desire to do good in Anakin, Dooku realized he may be seeing a younger version of himself. Perhaps the reason he always despised Anakin was because he knew they could have been a great pairing in another life, perhaps. But today, Dooku nodded to say they will do this together. If Anakin is right, perhaps then he will join him. Back in the Spire, Palpatine waited with anticipation until finally the elevator doors opened and Dooku was force-pushed out of it, landing on the cold steel floor in front of Palpatine. Anakin leapt out now, slamming his blade down on Dooku, who held his own saber barely in front of his face. Palpatine laughed, telling Anakin, "This is good," and Anakin twisted his hands, ripping Dooku's lightsaber out of his grip. Anakin pointed his own blade down to the helpless Dooku beneath him. Palpatine's smile only grew. He could feel Anakin's anger, his hatred, and he told Anakin to do it. Kill him now. And in that moment, Dooku broke. He saw now that his entire life, all of his struggles, his sacrifices, everything he's done, his grand vision, all of it was a pathetic sham, because he was always just meant for this, to be the victim of a cold-blooded murder from Anakin Skywalker, to be replaced. So, Dooku knew, it is time to come back. The Sith played him perfectly, until now. Anakin gave Dooku the most subtle nod. Then he lifted his blade, intending to strike down Dooku. Sidious's smile grew. He told Anakin to use his anger, strike down his true enemy. It was exactly as Sidious envisioned it. But then, Dooku's lightsaber ignited, cutting right into the side of Sidious. Dooku used the Force, guiding it to him. Sidious gasped. Dooku got to his feet, calling the saber back into his open hand. Sidious looked up in horror, in defeat, and in failure, and the top half of his body fell to the floor. It was a release of a decade's worth of emotions for Dooku. Part of him wanted to take the galaxy as his own. He could be the true Sith Lord, but he knew deep down that was not what he wanted. Anakin was right. The way of the Sith was one of pain, suffering, and betrayal. If the galaxy were ever going to truly rebuild, it had to be in the light. He finally knew this to be true. And now, the mission was General Grievous. If they can take him down, they can end this war today. But meanwhile, on the bridge of the Invisible Hand, Grievous was staring in disbelief at one of the security monitors. He just watched Palpatine be cut in half, but before he could even think about this, the doors swung open behind him, and Obi-Wan greeted him with a simple "hello there." Grievous turned, igniting 4 lightsabers, and just lunging at Kenobi.
My ring can be seen through my glove.
The 2 of them dueled through the control room, droids and Neimoidians running away or being cut down, and Obi-Wan soon cut through one of Grievous's arms. Obi-Wan smiled at him. The general just growled in frustration, knowing he has to survive this encounter. He told Kenobi that he will lose, then smashed right through one of the windows. Grievous flew out into space, used a cable to launch back into the ship, and headed right for the escape pods. Inside of the ship, Obi-Wan survived the windows breaking, and he grabbed his comlink, telling Anakin that Grievous has escaped. Should he come meet with him with Dooku and Palpatine? Anakin quickly replied back, saying that Palpatine is dead, but he and Dooku will now pursue Grievous. Obi-Wan took a moment to process everything that was just said, and he had to ask Anakin to repeat himself. Did he say that he is with Dooku? Anakin just said he will explain later. And up near the escape pods, Dooku and Anakin turned the corner at the same time to see Grievous running away as always. And finally, Dooku was able to let out his true feelings about Grievous. He always despised him, and as Grievous was about to eject, Dooku used the Force to rip the escape pod door, pulling Grievous out into the room with them. Grievous rolled to the floor, then looked up to see Skywalker and Dooku. Blades ignited, and Grievous called Dooku traitorous scum. Dooku said that he's always wanted to dismantle Grievous, piece by piece. And finally, he will get that chance. Grievous would lunge in at Anakin and Dooku, holding 3 lightsabers, after Kenobi cut down one of his arms. And although Grievous was strong, although he was trained in the Jedi arts by Dooku himself, he would never truly stand a chance against these 2. Dooku and Anakin were perhaps the 2 best duelists in the galaxy, with respect to Yoda, Windu, Kenobi, Plo, and together, Dooku and Anakin would destroy Grievous. From here, the 2 of them would wait until Kenobi arrived, and he would hold back his shock as the 3 of them got into an escape pod, blasting out of the Invisible Hand as the ship was ripped apart. Dooku would look out of the escape pod viewport, watching this fleet apart, knowing there was no turning back now. Sidious was gone, Grievous was gone, and the Separatist leaders would soon be arrested on Utapau. When their escape pod landed on Coruscant, Anakin and Obi-Wan requested a high security detail to bring them right to the temple, as they have a prisoner that the public cannot yet see. So, Windu and Yoda would personally fly over to the landing spot near the industrial sector sector, and they would see these two Jedi standing with Dooku. Windu had no feelings of remorse for Dooku. A large part of him wished he'd cut Dooku down on Geonosis when he had the chance. Every day, Mace regretted that Dooku was still alive, ruining this galaxy with war, but today he was here, offering his surrender. For Yoda, this was a surreal moment. Dooku's turn to the dark side affected him more than he ever let anyone know. All throughout his training with Dooku, he could sense that he was different than the rest of the Jedi. He had ideas that stretched far beyond the temple. He wanted to fix the galaxy. His ambitions led him to the Sith. But today, Dooku saw the truth. He saw that Anakin Skywalker was the answer, not as a Sith, but as the Jedi that Dooku had been waiting for. And Dooku would tell Yoda and Windu that he has all of the information that they've been waiting for. All he asks in exchange for his testimony is to be exiled into the galaxy. He does not wish to rule any longer. He will record a message for the Republic and for the Separatists to see, and then he will disappear. Yoda agreed, though Windu was more hesitant. How could they know that Dooku won't just return to the galaxy and try again? But Dooku explained he just killed Sidious, who Windu knew now for sure was Palpatine, and he also killed Grievous, and soon will give up the location to the corporate leaders. If this is a strategy for more power, then he's a fool. And so, Dooku would soon record a message for the Senate to see, and within hours, the Galactic Senate would gather, and in this giant meeting, the Separatist senators would be looped in as well, as Dooku's message was broadcasted to all of them. Dooku said that this war was never what any of them believed. From the beginning, he and Chancellor Palpatine worked together to create this galactic conflict. The two of them saw the corruption in the galaxy, and Dooku thought the best path to fix it was with the Sith. With Darth Sidious, who was posing as Chancellor Palpatine. The entire Senate heard this. They all gasped in unison, realizing the truth. And then, Dooku said he did all of this until he did what he had to do by killing Sidious. Dooku said that he created the clone army. He helped create the full droid army. He lost hope in the Republic and in the Jedi, but he has seen that he was wrong. The Jedi Order, led by two of the most popular faces in the galaxy, Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi, are the future. Dooku continued on for a long time, laying everything out, making it undeniable. And across the galaxy, on Utapau, the Separatist leaders would access this broadcast. They would prepare to evacuate the planet, but before they could, a Republic fleet led by Master Windu would arrive, and he led the clones into the planet to win one final battle. When it was over, the Jedi told the Senate that Dooku's whereabouts are unknown. The message was given to them, and then he disappeared. But without Palpatine, Grievous, and Dooku in the way, true negotiations for peace could truly begin. And these negotiations would go through very quickly. The groundwork for it had been laid over many months, and every time Padme, Bail, or a Separatist senator got close to true peace talks, one of the leaders of this war got in the way and interfered. But that would no longer happen. Peace was achieved. The war was over. Anakin would find out Padme was pregnant, making these final days of war some of the greatest of his entire life. Before long, Padme would give a safe birth, and after a few weeks of the galaxy settling back in after war and the Jedi calling everyone home, Yoda would request that Anakin and Obi-Wan come with him on a new mission. Both Jedi had no idea what this could be, but they would follow Yoda into a transport ship, blasting off into hyperspace. While flying through the blue stars, Yoda told them where they're going. They're off to find an old friend, someone who's learned to live after death. At the same time, both Anakin and Obi-Wan would say Qui-Gon's name, and when they dropped out of hyperspace, there was another ship waiting for them.
Here
Dooku
we go.
was
Looks
here.
like
Yoda had requested that Dooku meet them here, as this would allow him to find some redemption in his final days. Dooku could of course never return to the galaxy. He was a traitor, a murderer, and rightfully hated, but Yoda wanted him to see that he made the right choice in the end. So, the four Jedi closest in relation to Qui-Gon Jinn would descend down into the swampy Dagobah planet, and Yoda would help teach them to find Qui-Gon. All four of them would go off on their own path here on Dagobah, and Qui-Gon would come to each of them individually, guiding them into their next steps. For Anakin, this was balancing his family life with being a great Jedi. Yoda and the Council would not expel Anakin in the end, and because Ahsoka returned with Maul and chose to come back to the Order as a Jedi Knight, Anakin would soon be granted the rank of Master, as he would soon introduce his twin children to the Jedi Order, as Padme was working hard next to Chancellor Organa. For Obi-Wan, he would find that his future was as a leader in the Jedi Council. When Yoda eventually does step down, many Jedi will look to him after his heroics in this war. For Yoda, the next steps were all about reflection. His leadership brought the Jedi into war, and whether that was truly his fault or not, he looked inward, seeing it was time for the Jedi to move away from the Senate and politics. For Dooku, it was all about finding peace in his life of exile. He would find the light again. He would live out his final days in peace after making the right choice in the end. Overall, the galaxy was safe. The Jedi would settle in as heroes for the people, but every day, Windu would wonder what would have happened If he didn't find out the truth, would Anakin have turned to the dark side? Would anyone have been able to stop him? These were questions he was glad he would never have to answer, as the scariest question of all was simply, what if Anakin Skywalker turned to the dark side? And folks, that is our story here today. I thought it was, a little funny to end it with Windu asking a what if, anyways. Hope you guys enjoyed. As I mentioned in the past, Dooku is one of my favorite characters to write, and of course Anakin is as well, as you can see, because I've made, 1 or 2 Anakin videos in the past. So yeah, I don't know, I haven't really combined them much, or maybe I have, I don't remember all the videos I've made, naturally, because I've made a lot of them. But this was one that I just, came up with the other day, and it's not the craziest idea, but it was fun to write, and it's a challenge, right, to turn Dooku to the light side in that final moment, because it's the moment where all of their plans kind of culminate. But I think having Anakin kind of just talk to Dooku and then showing him that Palpatine wants to betray him, I think it's a good choice. And also, the part at the beginning of the Mace Windu finding out the identity of Sidious, that is not canon anymore, but it's legends. It's in the Labyrinth of Evil novelization that leads directly into Revenge of the Sith. That novel actually does have the Battle of Coruscant, and it has Windu going through all of those clues that I laid out in the beginning. So yeah, really interesting novel. And I wanted to just integrate that to
Alexa, set 2-minute timer.
The ship and be intent on, not exactly turning Dooku, but more so finding out the truth about Palpatine and bringing Dooku to his side in the end. So appreciate you guys. Let me know what you want to see next. As always, I'll see you in the next video.
According to reports in Russian media, one of Russia's exceedingly rare Su-57 fifth-generation fighters just went down outside of Moscow earlier today. Though, unsurprisingly, the Kremlin has only confirmed that an aircraft crashed, and they have not confirmed the type. Now, the Russian Ministry of Defense released a statement not long ago stating that a, quote, training and combat aircraft crashed in the Moscow region during takeoff and that the pilot was able to eject safely. And I have to credit Parth Saddam over at The Aviationist for getting the Russian statement published before I could find it anywhere else. Now, there are also rumors swirling that the incident may have been caused by friendly fire from local air defense assets, but so far, there isn't actually any evidence to substantiate that. Now, if this crash is confirmed to have been an Su-57, that would mark the second of Russia's most advanced fighters to be lost in non-combat crashes, which may not sound all that bad until I remind you that, at most, only around 32 serial production Su-57s have ever been built. And that means that more than 6%
Alexa,
of all
how much time is left on the
Su-57s
timer?
to roll off of the production line would now have been lost in crashes. And for comparison, the F-35, which the internet loves to tell you crashes all the time, has only seen a total of 13 airframes lost in crashes out of 1,340 F-35s delivered to date. That shakes out to less than 1% of F-35s lost in crashes. So, the next time someone tells you F-35s crash all the time, maybe bring that up and let them know that
Alexa,
statistically, Su-57s are more than 6 times as likely to be lost in crashes than F-35s. That ought to get them pretty riled up. Now, one Russian business news outlet called Kommersant made this story even more interesting by claiming that not only is an investigation into the cause of the crash underway, as you might expect, but they also said that the pilot is already under...
I'll be right back. I need to go to the bathroom. And this is a good spot because the wax needs to come down to pour. I'll be right back. Hello, Beck. I'm back.
Criminal investigation for violating flight regulations under Article 351 of the Russian Criminal Code, which is a violation of flight rules or preparation for a flight. Now, to be clear, it is entirely possible that this crash was indeed caused by an irresponsible pilot, but in a nation with such strictly controlled media, announcing a criminal investigation into the pilot immediately after a crash could certainly be an effort to pin the blame on that pilot rather than on the aircraft, which Russia has been trying to push on the export market for years now, with only Algeria taking them up on the offer. Russia needs to sell Su-57s to someone else to get the money they need to build them for themselves. But then again, Russian pilots are also pretty well known for their lack of professionalism in the sky, often leading to stern words being exchanged between governments. I mean, it happens practically on a weekly basis, but I'm reminded of a time in 2024 when a Russian Su-35 cut right in front of an American F-16 off of Alaska's coast. And I distinctly remember talking about how that maneuver was irresponsible and dangerous, and the comment section on that video lighting up with people telling me how Russian pilots are just real men who know how to break the rules and aren't afraid to push the limits. So here's my opportunity to say, I told you so, because professionalism among combat aviators is not about following the rules for rules' sake. It's about not blowing up $100 million worth of state secrets and potentially starting a war just because you're an idiot. So that leaves, I guess, 3 possibilities for this crash based on what Russian media and the Russian government themselves have stated so far. It could have been because the Su-57 is just a crash-prone aircraft. Or it could have been because Russian pilots are poorly trained and unprofessional. Or it could have been because Russian air defenders can't deconflict airspace over their own capital and manage to shoot down what is purported to be a stealth fighter with the Panzer air defense systems they've deployed around the city to defend against drones. But no matter how you look at it, it's a bad look for Moscow. Of course, accidents happen in aviation, and military aviation in particular is an inherently dangerous enterprise. But I think it warrants at least some attention when a 5th-generation fighter that isn't an F-35 goes down. Yeah, F-35 crashes drive lots of clicks and comments and shares, and that's why they get so much publicity. You can rest assured that if an F-35 had gone down on Friday, it would still be front page news today. But this story serves as another valuable reminder that the reason people think the F-35 crashes so often is not because the F-35 actually crashes so often. In fact, the F-35 currently has a 1.5 Class A mishap rate per 100,000 flight hours. Now, Class A mishaps are incidents that result in the loss of an aircraft, a death or permanent injury, or any damage that adds up to $2 million or more. Now, that means the F-35's Class A mishap rate is well under the U.S. Air Force's recent fleet-wide average of 2.02 mishaps per 100,000 flight hours, and it's 4 to 5 times better than both the F-15 and F-16 were at this point in their respective careers. Now, we obviously can't compare mishaps per flight hour between the F-35 and Su-57 because Russia doesn't disclose how many flight hours their jets actually get. But let's take a crack at it anyway, with very broad numbers that give Moscow the benefit of every doubt that we can think of.
What you doing, love, other than watching me?
Su-57s started rolling off the assembly line in December of 2019, and the first one actually promptly crashed during its first test flight. And since then, a total of maybe 32 jets are believed to have been delivered. So we'll assume 5 to 7 jets have been delivered per year every year since then. And every year, they were conveniently delivered on January 1st to maximize the number of hours that they got to fly that year. Now, assuming each aircraft accumulates a reasonable 120 flight hours per year, that would put Russia's Su-57 fleet at approaching 13,000 total flight hours at the time of this crash. And that would put Russia's Su-57's Class A mishap rate at an absolutely embarrassing 15.38 mishaps per 100,000 flight hours. That's more than 10 times worse than the F-35 and is objectively among the worst in all of modern tactical aviation. So even if Su-57s were really racking up the hours out there and the fleet was already at 20,000 total flight hours, well,
and
that
here
would
we
still
go.
put the platform at a Class A mishap rate of 10 per 100,000 flight hours. In fact, the only way the Su-57 could have anything even approaching a reasonable Class A mishap rate at this point would be if Russia's few dozen jets had somehow already accrued well over 150,000 total flight hours, which, even with the 30 or more aircraft they have today, would mean every fighter would have to fly something like 833 hours per year every year since 2020, which, you know, would obviously be impossible for a whole bunch of reasons, not the least of which being that Russia didn't have all 30 jets until just recently. So, to finally put this topic to bed, the Su-57 is continuing to be, well, more of an embarrassment to Russia than a wartime asset. But a lack of context, combined with American transparency and bad media practices, will still have, well, a lot of the internet convinced that the F-35 is the fifth generation problem child. But at least now you know better. And before you go, make sure to download the Sandbox News app today. It is
I knew the
F-35
F-35 had a few crashes,
and we
but I didn't
are
realize
slowly but surely making our way back to
that it was that different.
Too.
And I think
and
my
of
next
course,
load I need
don't
to do
forget click on
350
subscribe down below
grams.
so you never miss a drop from Sandbox News.
Okay.
Hello guys and gals, me Mudahar, and there's actually been a pretty big update on David. 5 days worth of updates on one of the most insane stories that I think I've covered on my channel. So for anybody that doesn't understand full context, a while back we looked at a story of a Tesla with a body inside it at a Hollywood tow yard in in Southern California. So, you know, people found this body, right, inside a Tesla that belonged to a former music star known as David. Now, for a while, this guy was touring and everything and yada, 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 until eventually everything just sort of stopped. Now, a few months ago, back in April, when we looked at David, you know, this sort of thing started heating up again, right? His case was brought for, and he was actually, charged and whatnot. In the last 5 days, there have been so much stuff coming out, there have been so much things releasing about David, that at this point, honestly, I think it's so heinous. I think this guy should get the actual death penalty based on the kind of shit that we're reading, okay? What we're about to discuss today is some of the most, harrowing shit you'll ever see. Some of the most, gut-wrenching stuff you'll see. And honestly, at the same time, it should be angering because it almost feels like this could have been something that would have been avoided had, I would say, anybody given the slightest amount of care towards the actual girl, Celeste Rivas, any form of care. Anyways, let's get started with what's been going on, okay? So, again, to give you the full timeline over here, back in 20th of April, 2026, this year, David was charged with murder, continuous abuse of a child under the age of 14, and unlawful mutilation of human remains. And then there were also special circumstance allegations, murdering a witness, murdering for financial gain, and then lying in wait. So, to understand all of the stuff that's been going on, there have been multiple circumstances. There have been, people mentioning that there was 40 terabytes of seized evidence that the prosecution had, multiple felony counts. And ultimately, at the end, the discussion that has sort of been happening the last 5 days is whether this is going to go to trial. So to give you an idea, this is actually going to go to trial. There was so much disgusting stuff that came out that it actually basically had to be going over there, right? The people have met their burdens on every count. And ultimately, at the end of the day, it's going to go on board. It's going to go there, bail is denied, and the defense basically has to really find a way to protect this scumbag piece of crap. So to kind of understand this sort of story, you have to go all the way back to January of 2022, where was the first contact of David Burke, also known as David, and Celeste Rivas. Now, inside this case, a lot of information had come out and a better timeline was sort of established. One of the detectives involved over here, Detective Farrell, actually brought up a message all the way back from 8th of August 2022. This was at a point when David Burke met a girl called Celeste, who at the time was actually 11 years old, okay? So this is how young this girl is. To give you an idea, right, this is an 11-year-old person, right? This is not somebody that was like 15 or 16 at the time. This is literally an 11-year-old little girl this person had ended up meeting, coming across, and ultimately, allegedly, of course, murdering. So again, to move on forward, when Burke was 18 and Celeste was 13, there was a alleged relationship that began. There was actually text messages that the prosecution brought up that had to deal with pregnancies and abortions and contraceptions and all the things you shouldn't be talking about
To a 13-year-old.
13-year-old, okay? Again, disgusting stuff. So January 2024 comes by and Detective Farrell actually comes out and tells the investigators that they confirmed that this girl at the age of 13 had one abortion already, okay? So we're actually looking at 2 abortions, right? This is number 1. Again, the information that comes out, as I was telling you, is incredibly harrowing with this story. So on 17th February of 2024, a welfare check actually happens, where a LASD detective, Deputy Juan Gonzalez, ends up going to Burke's home on Dewey Drive in West Hollywood. And again, over here at the Riverside County's request, because Celeste was reported missing at the time, they played body cam footage in the courtrooms where Burke had said that he had actually met this girl through Discord, believed she was 18. So April 2024 comes by, and the first week, Celeste is reported missing at Lake Elsinore. She's basically reported 3 times missing in the last year of her actual life. So again, 2024 rolls out, and then they travel together, right? They go to Las Vegas, where again, the prosecution showed a booking at Trump Hotel. They went to London, they went to Texas to meet his family, and the prosecutors...
I mean, London is breaking...
a classmate...
If they went to London, that's like federal on another level. That's international.
Actually confiscated her old phone. So then April 23rd, 2025 comes by where it gets incredibly disgusting, right? April 22nd, an argument occurs between Celeste. So they have this long, lengthy text exchange where Celeste, she's like jealous of all the other girls, and she's actually threatened to expose this underage relationship to the public. And remember, this guy has a pretty bumping career at the time, right? He's like one of the big, played artists on Spotify. I didn't really know how big David was until I was researching this. This guy was in like Fortnite concerts. There are millions of plays that this guy... I mean, his guy actually had a very serious career. Even monetarily, which we'll look at, is pretty impressive. So ultimately, she threatens to expose their relationship, and about a day later, the homicide is actually alleged to have happened. An Uber brings Celeste from Lake Elsinore to the Hollywood Hills home. So the prosecutors actually say here that Burke was allegedly stabbing her repeatedly at arrival, and basically stood by as she actually bled out. And again, then sent messages asking
That's so sick.
as part of an actual cover-up that was beginning here. So Detective Farrell comes in and says that the last recovered conversation between them is actually dated to this day. So then April 23rd, 2025 rolls, again, same day, the first Santa Barbara run actually happens. So you remember when we talked about that Tesla, and I was basically going over every single time that I talked about David, what happens when they pull the Tesla information out? Teslas are constantly connected to the internet, so I was always wondering, man, could they not just pull the information out of the car? Maybe, just maybe, they could be able to pull something out of the vehicle's cameras. Maybe the car picked up something on Sentry mode. Maybe allegedly if somebody was stuffing a body into it, maybe any of the cameras could have caught that. But thankfully in this case, it actually seems that the Tesla telemetry analysis showed that the phone and the vehicle were traveling together at the State Route 154 at around 11:31 p.m. So on the 24th of April, an outgoing call from his cell phone to Celeste goes to voicemail while the vehicle was actually headed northbound, returning to the residence at around 7 a.m. So, of course, on April 24th to May 5th, 2025, the prosecutors actually alleged that a shovel, 2 chainsaws, a body bag, heavy-duty laundry bags, and a blue inflatable kiddie pool and a burn cage were ordered under a false name and then delivered to his address. So, interestingly, the burn cage was actually reported all the way back, if we talked about this back in December, by the private investigator that was retained by the owner of the actual property, right? David's landlord. So ultimately, the actual Amazon account was using the name Travion Davis. Now, again, it kind of shows you, a little bit of how stupid this guy is, right? Like purchasing these items, like literally a corpse disposal kit to his home. But again, remember how decomposed like Celeste was. You know, what's scary is in some capacity, if he was even a little bit, if he was slightly smarter, he might have actually found a way to have gotten away with this if he was able to properly remove a body from the equation. I mean, people would ask questions, but I think when it comes to murder cases, like having the body is incredibly important. And ultimately, that was the one thing where he really fucked up on. So again, down the road, May 4, 2025 comes by, a 10-inch Makita chainsaw is purchased from Home Depot and delivered via Postmates. And this was never recovered, right? So then there were 2 further trips by a phone and a Tesla, which again, they were traveling together, to the same remote Santa Barbara County area. A charging session in Santa Ynez matched the vehicle's infotainment records. Again, Teslas pretty much keep all this information for, again, law enforcement, I guess, to grab all this metadata, right? So July 29, 2025 rolls, and the final drive happens, right? The data shows that his phone is disconnecting from the vehicle's onboard, like, infotainment system. A neighbor's camera record shows him walking back towards the house, and an automated license plate reader, again, we talk a lot about how evil, you know, those flock cameras can be, but ultimately, at the end of the day, thankfully, in one case here, a camera near Bluebird Avenue was actually able to spot the vehicle, right? Which is where he was departing for his, like, tour for the album Withered. So September 3rd to 5th, 2025 comes, the vehicle is cited for a 72-hour parking ordinance and then towed to the Hollywood impound yard. Which at this point, September 8th comes, where people actually discover the body in the vehicle because of that strong odor. And this is where, again, it's a black body bag containing the head, the torso, and then beneath it, a garbage bag containing severed arms and legs, right? And honestly, a day after that would have probably been the 15th birthday for this little actual baby. Again, it's a little girl. It's a baby at the end of the day. So there were actually more tattoos that were brought in by the prosecution, right? For instance, remember when we were looking at the actual internet, like, researchers looking into this? They found that, you know, David and Celeste were having, like, matching tattoos on their fingers. Well, the prosecution actually alleged that the reason her left ring and pinky fingers were amputated is that the ring finger carried a tattoo of his name, and on the 4th day of this actual preliminary stuff with the court, they were shown a photograph of a female hand with red cursive David tattoos. And those fingers, those 2, were not actually in the Tesla at the time. One of the bridges they found in this was an email address, right? Basically, the same account was used to purchase airline tickets for David and Celeste, and was actually linked to the Amazon account that ordered those 2 electric chainsaws under that.
Now we're starting Lavender
right? The shovel, 3rd saw
set of candles.
Postmates. So again, where one of the stupidest things that, again, David did, and thankfully he was stupid enough, is that he had kind of connected all of this evidence together under the email address, under the Tesla metadata, right? This guy thought he was smart. He thought he was going to try and hide a body, but thankfully it was the metadata, and it was a lot of the digital evidence that kind of linked it all together, right? It basically caught him red-handed. So on day 2 of the entire course, right, there were 2 financial, like, witnesses that were brought in because they wanted to talk about these special circumstances regarding David's financial gain theory. And this is where, again, a bunch of figures had come out where it showed how much money that David would actually be earning, right? So because he was partnered up with some of these big record agencies, he would be paid out, you know, about $19 million in the full potential value if he actually had, you know, given all of his albums, which obviously David will not be doing. Now, again, obviously you can imagine, right? Like, man, what stands between me and $19 million is this 13-year-old girl that absolutely could ruin my career. And again, I guess David thought that allegedly the best course of action would to actually be snuffing her out, right? Because ultimately, at the end of the day, he had this huge career, and she had the potentiality to completely destroy it. Now, when the Tesla was actually found, they found at least like 11 air fresheners in the vehicle. I guess they thought that this was going to somehow, sort of like counteract the smell of a dead body, which again shows you how stupid these fucking people are. And thankfully, it was their stupidity that probably will land them with the possible death penalty. And if not,
I hope
in
so.
prison, as this scumbag deserves for what he allegedly might have done to a little girl. So when they checked the Hollywood Hills garage, they
Groomed
found,
her.
again, a couple of extra things that actually made the entire courtroom sort of like gasp a little bit too, right? They found a rowing machine and a charging plug for a Tesla carrying bloodstains, right? There were trash bags testing positive inside and out. And of course, they were running the luminol, they were running the actual, trace fluids to check for, again, blood. And they'd even found this blue inflatable pool crumpled into a ball, which again, they tested it. It had no visible stain, but it did react to Blue Star. It smelled like fresh laundry. And again, there were 2 chainsaws in the garage, but those actually did test negative for blood. So there were 2 findings on the 3rd day, which were cutting in opposite directions over here. First was that Burke was included as this possible contributor in a 4-person DNA mixture swabbed from the outside of this garage trash bag. Second of all, the same bag contained wipes with brown staining that returned a profile roughly 3 trillion more times likely to be Celeste's rather than a stranger. And Burke's DNA was not detected on the wipe. On the cross-examination, they conceded that the DNA transfers without direct contact and that the software calculated only inclusion, not identity. So she maintained her professional opinion that his DNA was on the bag. That is very important to understand here. So then the cell site and Tesla telemetry also got brought in and questioned as well too. So again, according to this, the 2 identifiers, which were the IMSI of his handset, his cellular device, and the Tesla's onboard modem, right? So basically, it showed that when these devices were connected together, it showed that they were traveling in unison, effectively meaning that it would have been him in his own car, right? That's how the metadata kind of captures you. Now, when it came time for her autopsy, this is again where things get even more harrowing. At the time, at her examination, she was like 71 pounds, okay? A mass amount of her organs, like we're talking decompositional organ loss, like that was the words that you were kind of reading in this entire courtroom, right? And again, portions of her face partially skeletonized, left eye was completely absent, soft tissue
Skeletized.
liquefied, okay? And there was, again, insect activity because the body was decomposing for so long. Again, you can imagine what happens to a human body when it's left out in the California sun for, again, God knows how long, right? So then day 4 of the court case comes by, and they were talking about the continuous abuse count, right? A continuous abuse of a minor. So here is where, again, the iPhone and the iCloud data actually ended up screwing over David, right? So again, over here, the actual Detective Farrell in this case showed, again, tons of information, again, selfies, passport information, driver's license from David's, and of course, banking records, and a fake North Carolina identification as well, too. So there were about 50 images, and the courts were the ones looking at, obviously, the non-explicit stuff, right? The 2 kissing each other, lying in bed together, on FaceTime, for instance, right? You can see all the screenshots out there. And again, the material that the prosecutors identified as CSAM material, which was reviewed by them, was basically described, obviously it was never shown, but obviously that also kind of existed. What was huge about this was something that was brought in their messages that they refer to as Operation Awesome. So the prosecutors say that Operation Awesome was actually a scheme for Celeste to run away from home and end up living with Burke, so David, right? And again, if that actually does hold up, it actually really reframes that whole like missing person report, the 3 missing people, the reports on her, from a runaway teenager's, pattern into something actually much more coordinated by an adult, right? This would actually be something that we could start saying is, again, her being groomed as opposed to just running away out of nowhere. It would establish that. So again, the messages that they were sharing in court between Celeste and David, they were talking about obviously a future together. They were talking about the fears of, pregnancy at such a young age. And of course, ultimately, one abortion that was at least happening in January 2024. So again, I have to imagine, right? Like, I don't know what it's like to obviously go through an abortion, but I imagine if you're like a minor, if you are going to go through an abortion, like there has to at least be some questioning, or parents do have to get, like, you are a minor having a child aborted. Obviously, for that to happen, you would have to be, sexually involved with someone. And that, I'm wondering where the cops and where the family were when even this was happening, right? So again, the first messages they kind of had were November 2023, where they were talking about the fears of pregnancy, and obviously through this, they were establishing the start of this sort of sexual relationship. And then, of course, later, 8 to 9 January 2024, Celeste writes that neither of them can take care of it, followed again by the next day a message from David being this the last abortion before they have their own kids, okay? So again, this is a dude talking to, this is an adult talking to like a fucking 12, 13-year-old, okay? Disgusting shit. So, of course, ultimately, June 2024, it's them holding packages of emergency contraceptives. Then, of course, 9 July 2024 comes by where David writes that he's thinking about an abortion gift. Which, again, it just gets, it's like,
that's so creepy.
That is more deserving of a death penalty, it's probably a scumbag like this. Like, reading some of
It really is.
Even the descriptions of them are harrowing stuff to read, And of course, by the end of this, Farrell walks into the court, and again, he has, like 9,000 different text messages. But he shows, again, one final text message from Celeste, which was sent from the Uber that David had actually dispatched, right? Telling him that she was almost there and to open the door. And then her phone went permanently silent afterwards, right? So the arrival was actually at 10:10 p.m. on the 23rd of April, 2025. And then, of course, there were unanswered messages 21 minutes later, right? Which the prosecutors are arguing that's the time period that she was actually stabbed in. So again, it is fucking
horrible,
insane to go over here, right? The defense basically got in over here and said that, look, under cross-examination, Farrell conceded on a series of points that cut directly at those special circumstances. For one, Farrell saw that there was no indication Celeste ever threatened to contact law enforcement or pursue legal action against David, right? Her threats were actually going directly to David's mom, his friends, her own dad, and leaking information, right? There was no threat to go to the cops. And then, of course, she was pressing to come over 7 times. Again, this is the defense, kind of putting the blame on a little girl. I just want to kind of like bring that up here, right? So the defense basically said that she had asked 7 times to see him in the days before her death, right? Again, remember, she is a little girl, right? She is a minor at the end of the day. He is the adult. He didn't have to respond to her. He could have cut her off, could have got the parents involved. Allegedly didn't have to kill her, right? Just putting that out there. So she had apparently threatened to kill and mutilate him. And then again, what's wild is it seems like both sets of the parents, both David's parents and Celeste's parents, actually knew about this relationship, right? That even David had started attending church with members of her family. And apparently her parents even consenting for her to travel with the guy all the way to the United Kingdom. Like, the defense literally brought up a signed permission travel slip. It's fucking insane when I got to this point of the entire, case, because at the end of the day, look, I thought this was going to be a situation where, again, I saw her constantly be missing. I was always wondering where the parents were involved in this case, and it seems like the parents literally just let this poor girl absolutely face her death, right? So again, I wanted to look a little bit deeper into that situation as well, too, right? So this permission slip, by the way, in my opinion, and again, I think the opinion of the cases that I brought up is not relevant to any form of defense. So Detective Farrell agrees to 4 things over here in this defense, right? That both the parents of David and Celeste knew about their relationship. So already bad right there. David was attending church with members of her family, which obviously they would know. The parents actually gave consent for her to go with him to London for a week. Now remember, okay? People will say that, well, they didn't consent to her having a relationship. I don't have to obviously put two and two together, but what do you think's going to happen when you make your daughter a groupie to this guy going all the way to the UK? Do you think they're just going to sit there and play like Fortnite all day? Like, are we being fucking serious? So again, the earliest that she had messaged him when she was like 11 and he was like 17, she had told him that he was like 16, and she was like, at times 18, right? And again, at the end of the day, you might think that that is some level of a defense, but not necessarily, and we'll get into why. So the prosecution wants to go with count 2, which is continuous abuse of a child under the age of 14, right? So again, that's kind of what the prosecution wants to go with. And again, the defense is basically trying to use this sort of like, her lying about her age as sort of some defense here, right? Which again, ultimately, at the end of the day, one of the cases that I brought up was People v. Olson. So when it came to the case of People v. Olson back in 1984, the California Supreme Court held that a good faith, reasonable mistake as to the victim's age is not a defense to a charge under Penal Code Section 288, which is lewd contact with a child under the age of 14. So again, look, no matter what your view is, case precedent has been set that even if somebody lies about their age and you have a good faith reason to believe that lie, that does not protect you from the deeds that you have done. And again, there is also a contradicting record here too. So again, this People v. Olson won't really matter when I talk about, again, another big revelation that came into this case too. Again, the contradictions that came arising from this showed that the mom had apparently never met David whatsoever. The missing person reports that were placed, at least shows that, again, the parents who filed these reports required the cops to retrieve their daughter from the cities where the defendant lives are not obviously parents operating an approved arrangement, right? So obviously, even if the parents are doing these permission slips, having missing person reports, obviously, around where this guy lives is obviously a bit contradicting, right? It's weird. And then, of course, obviously, there were also the welfare checks that had occurred too, where deputies ended up going to his home. He was cooperative, said that he met her online. She had told him that he was 18. And here is where the deputies actually told him that she was 13. So what that basically means is, even if we look at the People v. Olson defense, the fact that a deputy had told her, bro, she's actually 13, kind of negates whatever argument they want to bring up of that good faith, I didn't know what her age was. Then obviously Operation Awesome, as we discussed earlier, where they were devising the scheme allegedly for her to run away from her home and live with David, is something that, could be considered an act of grooming. And that can be a very strong sort of incision into something much more serious in this case. So look, ultimately the end of all this, I think what it comes down to is David is without a doubt actually incredibly fucked in the story. And I don't say that
evil.
Okay, look, for a while when this happened, when this body was found, when this whole Tesla story started, I wondered, man, why have the cops not busted the guy who owns the vehicle? I mean, it makes no sense. But ultimately, at the end of the day, this was the murder of a little girl. And, when a body is that decomposed, at the end of the day, what it might seem like the
Skeletized.
any police agency is barely doing.
Skeletized.
It's not necessarily that. It's that they know that there's something fucked up, but they can't ruin the case. And what it seems like is, in the last 5 days, now that this case is actually going to go to trial, the prosecution have brought up thousands of messages, pretty much caught the guy red-handed based on technical metadata. And ultimately, the end, I really feel like the state of California is going to make an example out of David, as they should. I'm not joking when I say if this stuff is proven 100% without a shadow of a doubt, or beyond a shadow of a doubt, really, that's the standard we set in the legal system, David deserves the death penalty, At the
He
end of the
does.
day, I don't think I've ever seen somebody this disgusting. It almost feels like looking at a serial killer that you would see in history, right? But this is actually happening in real time. This is you're witnessing one of the most heinous crimes happen. You're witnessing the alleged murder of like a little girl, right? And ultimately it's this guy who seems like he basically has no fucking remorse, right? Especially when a lot of the evidence kind of points towards him being the perpetrator for all this, right? It is really one of the most deplorable things that I've seen. And at the end of the day, I really don't know what more I can say other than this guy deserves the fucking death penalty. Ladies
I agree.
and gentlemen, this is the David case. It's about as updated as we're getting, and hey, we'll see how this story plays out when this case actually goes to court. But so much information has come out, and none of it is really good, obviously. The subject matter is not a good thing. But ultimately, at the end of the day, look, it's a very serious case, and it's something that I've been enamored with ever since I first covered it. And ultimately, at the end of the day, I really do want to see justice done. I think everyone does want to see it done, and I think hopefully the LAPD brings that motherfucking justice to this case. Ladies and gentlemen, this is me, Mudahar, and I'm out.
Oof. Joel and Elena.
Morning, Elena.
Morning. At this point in the renovation, taking out the trash is just a part of our daily routine. This flooring is disgusting.
Yeah.
These look heavy and annoying.
Yeah, they're just so crumbly.
What do you want me to do?
I don't know.
I can climb up.
Okay.
I really need to start wearing work shoes.
The good thing is the pieces get lighter the longer you carry it, because more and more chunks fall off.
Okay, now what? Now what doesn't mean just do something. It means tell me what you want to do.
I tell you with my actions.
I don't like that.
Sorry. We'll do that on the next one. We'll stand it up and then flop it down.
What? One of these days, I'm gonna be stronger than you, and I'm just gonna strong arm my way through everything, and I'm gonna mow you over in the process. And then you're gonna be like, oh, that's really annoying. I'm so sorry I did that to you. All those years.
You're right.
All those pinched fingers and toes and arms. You've pinched my arms before. Okay. I was gonna scoot it that way because it was already in line.
I was just trying to balance out the truck.
I figured there'd be more that would go on the other side.
With partition painting ahead of us, it was time to bring out our trusty beer pong tables, which have probably seen more renovation work than actual beer pong.
There.
What do you think?
Good. So feel this. Feel how dull this feels. Now feel this up here.
Oh yeah, that feels really smooth.
So this is all we need to do. So it's not a ton of sanding. It's just enough to get that shine off of there. And then these have already been painted, so this should be even quicker. Like this was a gray color before, and whatever paint's on here has a really good bite to it. It's not scraping off. Okay. So we already have a good base. We just have to just quickly go over it and yeah. And then you need to decide what color the hardware needs to be.
Yeah.
And then these all need to be cleaned. I wonder if you could just put them in the dishwasher.
I feel like they probably need to go into a bucket with some really strong cleaner.
Yeah, that's probably true.
I headed up front to do some organizing, and Joel got back to work sanding.
This is the first test on our partitions. Here we go. So this stuff should lay very smoothly. And we're looking to put a nice thin coat on this.
I mean, that's laying pretty darn nice. I think I'm gonna be happy with this. And Elena, I think you're gonna love it. You won't be able to tell it has not been sprayed. It's gonna look so good.
Ah. BRB, I gotta get some drinkage. Hello, I'm back.
While the partitions dried, Joel moved back to the bathrooms.
So our goal is to do a sample wall today. Instead of doing the whole thing like I did the women's bathroom, so we can make sure the color's good. So I'll do a sample wall in here, and then we'll do a sample wall of this color in the women's bathroom. And this color looks a lot better already. Let's go next door.
I like to create more work for Joel.
What do you guys think? Old color, it's just a lot richer. I think it looks a lot nicer.
Measuring something once during a renovation is like trying to eat just one chip. Physically impossible.
So I just want to measure over here. I know you said it's 6 feet. It's 6 feet from the ceiling, right?
Thought it was 7. Maybe it's 6.
You told me 6.
Okay, 6.
And then where do we want the counter to be? Like how tall would the counter be on this side? I'm trying to think of how big all the under counter.
Well, here, let me see that.
I should know this because I was just looking at all the numbers for standard bar equipment and stuff.
35 inches.
Okay.
36 to be.
So, I mean, that's probably right about where you had your six foot line, I think.
Remember what? So you factor in the floor height and all that, so you're going to be about here.
Okay.
Okay, so we need, do we have something to mark on the wall?
You want a pencil?
That would work.
Okay. You'd be a good cabinetry builder, not a rough carpenter.
That explains it, because your mindset is good enough, and people that are like, oh, it's good enough, they do rough carpentry.
Yeah.
And the people like me that like precision do the detail work.
Yes.
This is 35.
Yeah, I would plan on 36. Give yourself a little bit extra wiggle room.
So it is Memorial Day, and because we don't know when to stop, we are here doing a little bit of work. The parade is going on out front right now, and Joel is painting the partitions in the bathroom.
And they were disgusting. I was sanding off mostly grime, not necessarily sanding the paint finish.
I'm seeing lines over here.
I know, I'm just spreading the paint around before I smooth it.
Just making sure you know what you're doing.
Girl.
They look good. I like the color.
Yeah, I think it'll look really nice. You should think about what color the hardware you want done on these.
I thought we decided black.
No, you didn't tell me anything.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we decided black because I said, I mean, it can go either way, honestly, because there's going to be, it's more like an antique gold, the mirrors and stuff that are going in. There's also some black, so I think both would look fine. I kind of like the idea of gold, though, honestly. What time is he supposed to be here?
Any minute. He said 2:30.
There he is. Hi. With Noah, the networking specialist there, we walked the building to plan our Wi-Fi networks and map out the security cameras. He gave us a list of everything we needed to purchase, which Joel picked up later that week.
I'm on my way to Madison Heights. I'm picking up all the stuff we need to run the security cameras, our routers, our access points, everything we need to network our building, get it up and running. Yeah, just gonna grab everything. I had a friend help me spec everything out. We're going to be running cable this Saturday. I wanted to get all the cable ran before we painted just to make sure if we have to punch any holes, I can do the repairs. So we got a lot of stuff to grab, and I got 34 minutes till I'm there. Nice, relaxing ride. All right, I just pulled into Micro Center. Let's go grab the stuff we need. All right, so we got a huge list of stuff, so we'll see if we can fit it all in this cart. Okay, so we're switching over to the black access points and cameras. I think it'll match the aesthetic better. So he's going to the back to get all the black cameras.
There you go.
All right.
These are 5 of these.
5, and then we have 3 more coming, right?
3 more coming.
All right. Beautiful.
These are the turrets.
Love it.
All right.
Dude.
These are the big guys. Still got 2 more things.
2 more? Okay, yeah.
Can you imagine that?
Let's make a nice bed here. Let's try that. Will it fit?
It works.
It'll work.
All right, 2 more things.
Okay. And we still got the Cat 6 cable too, right?
Oh yeah, 3 more things.
What's this one?
This is the Switch PoE.
The 16?
Yes.
PoE plus is what I'm told.
Yeah.
I guess. Got more?
Okay.
Yep. Sweet.
It's 1,000 feet.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
You have a good one, man.
You too.
Good luck.
Thanks. All right, we got everything. Heading to the register. Okay, just leaving Micro Center with tons of stuff that keeps falling around. So this is our network. Archer's is gonna have the best Wi-Fi in town. You'll be able to sit and work for hours. Not only will we have the best Wi-Fi, we'll have a good camera system, so thieves stay away, or we're gonna catch you. So Lena's at home spending money on furniture, and I'm buying networking stuff. We're each doing what we love. is there a tub of hand soap back here? Oh! Paper cut. Everything fit in perfectly. Good morning, guys. We are at the store, as always. Got a few things going on. Painting more of the partitions for the bathroom. I got Caden upstairs. He's helping rip all the staples off the floor.
Almost
Let's get
done.
at it.
Getting close.
Okay, I gotta run home for a little bit and send some emails. As you can see, this is a long process. We'll be here a while.
Oh, that reminds me, where's my... all like screws or nails or something?
That's it for today. See you tomorrow.
The next day, we dropped off the networking gear. It was another reminder that building a bookstore involves a lot more than books.
I should probably not put it right in front of the camera. Hi, camera.
Hi, Dewey.
Hi.
Hi, buddy. Hi.
What do you think, bud?
Here's our umbrella
Huh.
that we've been looking for.
All right, so for those of you who don't know what all this is the brains of our store. It's gonna be our security cameras, our Wi-Fi, access points, everything is gonna run through all this. So a couple days we're gonna run a bunch of cable and start getting it all hooked up. Whoa. You picked the heavy stuff.
It's not that heavy. What are these?
Switches and routers, or...
This says Machine Pro on it, and then this says NVR.
Yeah, the NVR is the recording device. The Machine Pro, the Dream Machine, is your router.
Now imagine if these were boxes of books.
They will be soon. These are all the cameras.
Yeah, I just don't like that you don't have like things together.
You still around, baby?
It's that chaos part of me.
It's horrible. Joel's dream.
If this would not overwhelm me, if it was like I didn't have a million other things going on.
No, I just mean you really like networking, and you like.
I'm excited. It'll be great. But
you like tech gear, and so it's fun for you.
don't get me wrong, I'm excited to see this all up and running. The thought of putting in the work is not something I want to do, but
that's fair.
Yeah.
We ended the day with a quick progress tour from Joel. A lot had changed over the previous month during my minimal attendance.
All right, so we are over here at the store. Elena's behind me. I'm gonna give her an update of what's going on here, all the different projects. She's been at home taking care of a lot of admin stuff, ordering a lot of things, doing all the cool behind the scenes business stuff that I hate desperately, but she loves doing. So I'm gonna show her around. So this looks different last time we were here. We got the bar station out.
Yep.
All the hoses.
I don't even understand how, like, we need to get these out, but they're not even connected still, right?
No, I just haven't carried them out.
You just haven't thrown them away.
No.
Okay.
No.
I thought there was more to it.
No, this floor is pretty much ready to have the crew come in and tear this out, put new subfloor in, and get it ready.
I think it's crazy that there was literally a piece of equipment that sat right there over that hole. I don't even understand how it did not fall through.
Yeah, that floor, you step in it, you're just gonna fall through. It's so rotten.
Yeah.
So it'll be nice and sturdy when we're done. Won't have any fear of any employees falling through.
Right.
So now we bring this down to 185.
We're back in the cubby in a sea of partitions here. I've been painting the bath partitions.
And we're gonna
refurbishing them,
do,
getting them ready.
get our cup and our scale out.
These are the women's partitions. We got to flip them.
We're doing
yet, but they're mostly done.
20
Did a test on this hardware. We're gonna be painting the hardware.
6
Spray
ounces.
painted these with a
26
We'll
grams.
take this off and spray those black. All the hardware's around here somewhere. One of these days we'll spray it all black.
Okay. And the men's room.
The men's room is all done.
That's perfect.
Yeah, the men's room is done.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, they're looking really good.
Okay, so we're obviously you can tell, hopefully,
So now-
paint's done in here, the lower paint. This is the new color.
Yeah.
Alexa,
I
set
like
2-minute
this
timer.
color. I mean, it's darker than what I wanted, just because that like orangey color that was in here, it felt really dark already. So I didn't want, it's dark wallpaper. I didn't want a dark bottom, but I do think this color is going to look a lot better, and hopefully the lighter partitions will keep it a little brighter in here. I just really don't want it to feel like dark, like you can't see what you're doing.
I think you'll be able to see.
Okay.
I think it'll be fine. Oh yeah, and then our cleaner is gonna stop by Saturday and check out these floors and look about steam cleaning them and cleaning the grout real good.
Okay.
Man, this camera makes it look like fire engine red almost. It doesn't look good on camera, guys, but in person it looks good.
It looks very pretty.
Anti-anxiety
In person,
lavender
it's
candles.
Like a burgundy wine color,
How pretty does that look?
and it looks really good with the wallpaper.
Okay, so come over here to the men's. So this has 2 coats now, the test color. This is the same color as the women's.
So we just need to bring, now that there's 2 coats, we just need to bring the wallpaper in.
Test the wallpaper,
Yeah.
make sure it's good.
And if not, hopefully the other color, which I'm just now realizing is kind of like the color on your shorts.
A little bit, yeah.
Hopefully that will work instead.
I still think a blue or green would be cool. I don't see your full vision, so I'm ready to rock and roll with your direction.
I don't know, I'm not against blue and green. Those just feel expected.
Men don't like surprises.
Okay. All right, where to next?
Joel's so ridiculous.
Come to the back.
Yeah.
What are you doing in the back?
I got the trash.
We need to get up
Most
and
of
see the
trash
family
pile
up
is
in
not
Monroe.
done.
Yeah, this is
It
nice.
was like 2 weeks ago, it was just heat, like full.
Yeah.
So this is gone.
We continued the tour upstairs because the building was very committed to giving us more work.
All right, so exciting thing is the bar is sold.
Very nice.
Alexa, stop.
So probably next week, I'll be disassembling it.
So now we bring this down to a 130.
She's paying a little extra for me to assemble it and store it until she's ready to pick it up. Maybe 60% of the staples have been removed.
On this side?
Okay, they were staples.
On all of it, okay. Because I see like a couple lines
Yeah.
going down still.
But this like section here and down was probably 50% of the staples by itself because they were so.
Yeah, there was a lot
There
over
were
here.
so
I
many down
remember
here.
that.
It was insane.
Okay. It's looking good up here. I know this is like a really slow, tedious thing, but it's getting done.
Yes, it is. And
Lots of thanks to Caden for that.
yep. Okay, I have one more thing to show you.
Okay.
Kind of made a mess.
When do you not make a mess?
So come over here. I have one more thing to show you too. Okay, so we kind of had to change up our plans a little bit. We had to take up the dance floor. Okay, so I wouldn't say we had to, but the circumstances were
We started to have concerns about 2 different floors and the maintenance and even things as simple as the layout with where furniture is going to be placed. There's now 2 different heights to the flooring, and so that could make it difficult on where we place things. We thought that it would just be best to do one type of flooring across the whole second floor.
And we did a cost comparison. So the cost to sand this down and refinish it was almost the same price to rip this out and put the same floor in. and it's a good hardwood floor we're putting in. It just felt like it was the right move. Now we can extend the floor all the way through, same floor through here and upstairs, and it's gonna extend into our bathroom hallway. So it's gonna feel nice, cohesive. It's gonna be cleaning and maintaining easier, like you said. So it's gonna look awesome. If you want a scrap of flooring as a memorabilia, it's here. You can come grab one.
Not by the time this airs.
No, that's true. By the time this airs, this will be gone.
I'm excited.
You're gonna help tear it out?
Yeah, I'll help tear it out.
Tomorrow?
Sure.
Shake on it.
Oh, it's more of an issue of, do I need to do anything on the computer? Do I need to place orders of any kind? So if are you thinking of coming in the afternoon after your morning stuff?
I'm busy till dinner time.
Okay, so you want to come in the evening and do this?
I want to.
I know, that's what I'm asking. So you want us to come in the evening and do this?
That's the only time I can do it. I was asking if you were gonna come and do it.
Oh, you want me to come do it on my own?
See what it's like to work by yourself over here.
That's fine, I will. My only hesitancy is if I need to be ordering things before I come work. If we get home and discuss the priority of things and I can come here tomorrow,
okay,
I will work on the floor.
Okay. All right. Okay, well, it's late. Good night.
Nope. We're not done with updates.
We're not done with updates?
No, so now we just need to do an update of, okay, what are we doing moving forward?
I don't know. We're taking this floor out. What are we doing moving forward? That's a loaded question.
It's not a loaded question. We already discussed it earlier.
Well, then you tell everybody.
I'm happy to do that, but we're going to go downstairs and do it.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Our knees are touching.
So we have been demoing the building for weeks now. We have been trashing things out, getting rid of stuff, selling things. It's just been one really big deconstruction process where everything just we were just doing it because we knew that we needed to get it done. Whereas now we are at a point that the things that we are doing, it feels like there's a purpose for it because we're finally at the point that things are going to be going in. Or, I guess we have been working a little bit on the bathrooms, but it's just been this really slow, disjointed process. And we're finally at a point where big things are going to start happening, big changes, big fixes, new things are going in. So the subfloor in the bar area is getting fixed next week, which then means that we'll be able to put in the new flooring. We have next weekend, the first floor flooring is getting sanded down. And so then when we come back, Joel will be able to refinish the first floor flooring, and the second floor is almost completely prepped and ready for the new flooring to go in. Probably after you refinish this first floor, we could be installing the flooring upstairs while this is curing. Would that be a good thing to do?
Potentially. I don't know. It depends on when the flooring can even be delivered.
Oh, that's true. I didn't think about that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we have to talk about timeline, but the whole point is we have things that are coming together. The bathrooms are coming together. The flooring is finally, being finished, and we're switching gears after weeks and weeks of being able to actually put this space back together, not just take it apart.
Yeah. And on top of that too, tomorrow.
So we have.
Look at plywood. So we're going to start.
For this batch, make one more batch.
We have 40 bookcases.
Well, I don't know.
They're being built off site. They'll be assembled and delivered.
Well, yeah, I have to do another batch, but I'm gonna have to get my other.
Ready to go so they can sit on them. But
I've done 2.5 pounds of candle.
While everything else is happening in here.
Yeah.
So we spoke with our electrician. Stuff's happening there. We're starting to talk with distributors. Lots of things are happening.
Yeah. Furniture is being ordered. I placed the first large furniture order, so that's actually the first box is going to be delivered tomorrow, and we have multiple boxes being delivered over the next 5 days. We've done a little bit of cleaning up in the front area here, and we have to do a little bit more organizing because we have to find room to put all the boxes in.
Yeah, I have a feeling it'll be stacked to the ceiling.
Oh yeah. but the furniture is going to look amazing together. I am so excited.
There's days I feel good leaving here, and there's other days I leave slightly panicked.
Yeah, well, and it has not been helpful that I have not been here much this month, and we knew that. We knew that I wasn't going to be here much this month, but we vastly underestimated the amount of time it was going to take to clear this building out.
Well, we
At
ended
least
up.
I did, in
Yes.
terms of the timeline. I thought we'd get it done in 1 month.
But we cleared out a lot more than we expected to, because like once we got into it, we were like, okay, well we can't save this, we can't save this, and then it's like, okay, well, you know, we're doing a lot more than we expected, and then our time's been so broken.
There
up,
we go.
And so it's just been really hard.
That's
but
the other
it's
2.5
okay.
pounds of
Yeah, we fully
candle.
expected to have full days that we were coming here and working, and we get 1 full day a week if we're lucky.
If that, yeah.
So that does make it hard to feel like you're getting good progress going. It feels like you just start to get something done and then you have to stop and we have to go home, or you've got an appointment, or I have an appointment.
Yeah, getting a dog, having your son have surgery, having your son graduate high school.
Planning his open house.
Planning his open house.
Having 2 weddings.
2 weddings.
Multiple graduation parties.
And trying to open a business.
And still work and make money, so
Yep, and
we can pay bills.
Yep, so we're managing.
It's a lot.
Yeah, it's okay.
This very much has always described our life, though.
Yeah, it's been fun. It's been fun.
Most days.
Yeah, I wouldn't have it any other way. I mean, it'd be great if I had $80,000 just to hire it all out.
Yeah.
But then you
That's
don't enjoy the
half the fun.
process, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's it. That's where we're at with everything. Lots of exciting stuff happening. We are very, very tired, especially Joel today. It's been a very long day, so his brain is holding on by a thread at this point.
I'm cooked.
Ooh, that smells really good.
Okay, let's go home. Stay tuned for next week's episode as we receive some exciting deliveries, make progress with the ongoing projects throughout the building, and get the network cables installed.
The amphitheater was practically empty, and the dim lights of the Coruscant Opera still pulsed in the background, reflecting soft colors on the curved walls. Anakin remained seated beside Palpatine, feeling the weight of the words he had just heard. The story of Darth Plagueis, the wise, still echoed in his mind
Picture
like an
of
insistent whisper.
Palpatine whispering
He
to
looked at the
Anakin.
Chancellor,
Hilarious.
trying to understand why that man, a respected politician, knew so many details about a Sith legend buried decades ago. Chancellor, you speak of that legend as if you knew it all too well, said Anakin, trying to keep his voice calm, though curiosity was already mixing with suspicion. Palpatine smiled, a smile that once seemed paternal, but that now, in Anakin's eyes, carried something colder. The Sith leave marks on history, Anakin. Marks that survive even when we try to erase them, replied the Chancellor, closely watching the young Jedi's reaction. Anakin crossed his arms, trying to organize the thoughts piling up rapidly. He knew that story was not ordinary, and the fact that Palpatine knew it in such detail troubled him deeply. A normal Jedi would never have access to that kind of knowledge. That's not something learned from Senate books, he thought, feeling a chill run down his spine. He then remembered another phrase Palpatine had mentioned moments before, about powers that not even the Jedi would consider natural. That disturbed him even more, since it sounded like something beyond the limits he himself knew of the Force. Chancellor, you said certain powers wouldn't be possible for a Jedi. How do you know that? That's not taught at the temple, Anakin asked, trying to disguise the tension in his voice, without complete success. Palpatine settled into his chair, folding his hands over his lap, as if carefully weighing his response. I speak with many people, Anakin. Philosophers, historians, even old scholars of the Force who no longer belong to any order. Knowledge doesn't belong only to the Jedi, he said, in a tone that tried to sound casual, but that no longer convinced Anakin as it once had. The young Jedi shook his head slowly, not taking his eyes off the Chancellor. He felt there was something behind those words, something that didn't fit the simple explanation he had just heard. But you spoke of midichlorians, Chancellor. That's extremely specific knowledge, something only Jedi study in depth. Where did you learn about that? Anakin questioned, his voice now firmer, almost a challenge disguised as curiosity. The silence that followed seemed to stretch longer than it actually did. Palpatine watched Anakin
one
with
more
redoubled
batch.
attention, as if gauging how far he could take that
And then I think
conversation
I'm done
without
for the
revealing
night.
too much. Midichlorians are
We've
mentioned in
been
ancient texts. Anakin,
on for
long
3
before they
hours.
became
This
part
is one of my
modern
longer
Jedi training.
streams.
There are records scattered across the galaxy, in archives few bother to investigate, he replied, choosing his words carefully. Anakin, however, was not satisfied with that answer. He had already read much of the temple's archives, and knew that such specific information about midichlorians didn't circulate freely outside the Order. That still doesn't explain how you know so much about this, Chancellor. It seems you've studied this subject quite deeply, Anakin insisted, crossing his arms again, as if trying to protect himself from a truth that was beginning to take shape in his mind. Palpatine rose slowly, walking a few steps around the box, as if buying time to formulate the perfect response. You're perceptive, Anakin. You always have been. That's why I trust you more than any other member of the Council, he said, trying to steer the conversation away with a calculated compliment. But Anakin was not completely distracted. He knew the political games of Coruscant well, and knew how to recognize when someone was trying to change the subject. Chancellor, I appreciate
There we
the
go.
trust, but that doesn't answer my question.
That
You know
is
about midichlorians, about Sith legends, about powers that go
3.5,
beyond what
and I
the Jedi
need
teach.
the purple
That's
dye.
no coincidence, Anakin stated, his voice carrying a seriousness he rarely showed in front of the Chancellor. Palpatine stopped walking and turned to Anakin, his face momentarily serious, almost calculating, before softening his expression again. You're right to question, Anakin. A good leader should always question what he doesn't fully understand, he said, trying to validate the young Jedi's suspicion without really clarifying anything. Anakin, however, felt that answer was just another smokescreen, a carefully constructed diversion. He decided at that moment to keep those questions to himself, to watch the Chancellor more closely from then on, and perhaps, when he had the opportunity, to bring his suspicions to the Jedi Council. Anakin walked slowly through the corridors of the Jedi Temple, still absorbed in the thoughts the amphitheater had stirred. The questions about Darth Plagueis, about the midichlorians, about Palpatine's peculiar knowledge, kept piling up in his mind without finding satisfying answers. He tried to organize it all logically, but every explanation he found seemed to raise even more doubts. That was when he remembered a conversation with Obi-Wan about the political structure of the Republic. Back then, Obi-Wan had commented, almost in passing, on the strangeness of Palpatine remaining in office even after the natural end of his term as Chancellor. Anakin stopped in the corridor, trying to reconstruct every detail of that distant conversation. He recalled that Obi-Wan had mentioned that, traditionally, a Chancellor should leave office as soon as his term expired, especially during times of crisis, when the transition of power was even more important to maintain the Republic's balance. However, Palpatine had remained, claiming that the war demanded stability, that the Senate trusted him, that there was no time for elections amid the widespread chaos. Anakin, at the time, had not questioned that deeply, accepting the explanations as reasonable given the extraordinary circumstances the galaxy faced. But now, after everything he had heard in the amphitheater, that prolonged hold on power took on a different weight, a shadow that had not existed before. He began to wonder if all of this was somehow connected. A man who knew Sith legends in detail, who knew more about midichlorians than he should, and who also refused to give up power even when circumstances demanded it. Anakin felt a knot form in his stomach as he considered these coincidences side by side. He knew that suspecting Palpatine was something dangerous, especially considering the closeness the two had maintained for years. Still, as a Jedi, he had been trained to question, to observe patterns, and the patterns forming before him seemed increasingly difficult to ignore. Anakin decided he needed to talk to someone about it, someone he trusted and who could help him see the situation more clearly. Obi-Wan was the most obvious choice, not only for being his former master, but also for being the one who had first raised the question about Palpatine's hold on power. Anakin knew he would need to choose his words well, since suspecting the Supreme Chancellor of the Republic was a serious accusation, something that could not be raised lightly before the Council or any other Jedi. He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the decision he was about to make. As he walked toward Obi-Wan's quarters, Anakin mentally reviewed how he would present his doubts, trying not to seem too paranoid or impulsive. He knew his relationship with Palpatine was already viewed with some suspicion by certain council members, and that raising suspicions at that moment could be interpreted in different ways, depending on who heard it. Still, he felt he couldn't simply ignore what he had noticed. The Chancellor's words about Darth Plagueis, about powers beyond the natural, about knowledge no ordinary Jedi would possess, kept echoing in his mind, demanding an answer he couldn't find alone. The temple's corridors seemed longer than usual, as if the building itself felt the gravity of the thoughts Anakin carried with him. He passed a few Jedi who greeted him briefly, but barely registered the words exchanged. So focused was he on organizing what he would say to Obi-Wan. He finally arrived in front of his former master's quarters, pausing for a moment before announcing his presence. His hand hovered near the entry panel, hesitant, as he gathered the courage to take that step that could change everything he knew about the war, about the Republic, and about the man he had always considered a close and trustworthy ally. Anakin finally pressed the panel, and the door slid open, revealing Obi-Wan seated in meditation. He opened his eyes upon sensing the presence of his former apprentice. "Anakin, I didn't expect your visit at this hour. Did something happen?" asked Obi-Wan, immediately noticing the tension etched on the young Jedi's face. Anakin entered slowly, closing the door behind him, as if wanting to ensure that conversation remained serious from the first instant. "Master, I need to talk about something that happened at the amphitheater during the opera. Palpatine told me a story about a Sith named Darth Plagueis, and something about it hasn't stopped bothering me since," said Anakin, sitting facing Obi-Wan, not hesitating to go straight to the point. Obi-Wan furrowed his brow, adjusting himself in his chair, giving full attention to what Anakin had to say. "Go on, Anakin. What exactly did he tell you?" he asked, sensing this was not a trivial concern. Anakin took a deep breath before continuing, choosing each word carefully. "He spoke about Sith legends with knowledge no politician should have, Master. He told of a Sith who discovered secrets about life and death, powers that, according to him, a Jedi would never have the courage to seek. And he mentioned midichlorians, with details not even all Jedi know," said Anakin, his voice carrying unusual seriousness. Obi-Wan crossed his arms, absorbing each piece of information with redoubled attention. "That is indeed strange, Anakin. Few outside the Order have access to that kind of knowledge," he commented, trying to understand where this would lead. Anakin shook his head, feeling he needed to say what he really thought, without holding back. "Master, it's not just strange. I have no more doubts about it. The Chancellor knows too much about the dark side of the Force, has always distrusted the Jedi, has always hinted that we hide secrets from him. That's no coincidence, Master. It's a pattern that points to a single conclusion." Obi-Wan remained silent for a moment, weighing the weight of those words before answering. "You're saying you suspect the Chancellor is the Sith Lord we've been searching for so long," Obi-Wan stated, more as an observation than a question. Anakin nodded without hesitation. "It's not just a suspicion, Master. I'm certain. He knows about Sith legends no senator should know. He knows about midichlorians with a precision only someone connected to the Force would have, and he has always shown distrust toward the Council. All of this together cannot be ignored." Obi-Wan rose slowly, walking to the window, watching the constant movement of ships over Coruscant as he processed the gravity of that statement. "If you're that convinced, Anakin, then this can't stay between just the two of us. A suspicion of this magnitude, involving the Supreme Chancellor himself, needs to be taken with all the seriousness it deserves," said Obi-Wan, turning to face his former apprentice. Anakin felt a mix of relief and apprehension upon realizing his master wasn't treating it as mere exaggeration. "So what do we do, Master?" Anakin asked, his heart still heavy with the certainty he carried.
Give me
We
one
go to
second.
the
I have
council
to
right
pee.
now, Anakin.
Hello again, baby.
They need to hear this from you. The council chamber was already assembled when Obi-Wan and Anakin entered, their firm footsteps echoing through the circular hall. Masters, forgive the interruption, but there's an urgent matter that needs everyone's attention. Obi-Wan began, stopping in the center of the room while Anakin remained at his side, silent, waiting for the right moment to speak. Mace Windu leaned forward slightly, his attentive eyes scanning the two Jedi. Speak, Obi-Wan. What happened? Obi-Wan took a deep breath before starting, choosing his words carefully, aware
Playing
of the
any
gravity of
games?
what he was about to reveal. Anakin came to me with a
Reading? Doing
serious
anything
suspicion,
fun?
Masters. According to him, Chancellor Palpatine showed knowledge about Sith legends and about the Force that no politician should possess. Furthermore, Anakin believes, quite firmly, that the Chancellor may be the Sith Lord we have been searching for so long. The statement hung in the air, and the silence that followed was charged with tension, each master absorbing the magnitude of those words before reacting. Yoda closed his eyes for a moment, his expression becoming even graver than usual. Anakin stepped forward.
Nothing sound fun?
Feeling this was the moment to lay out everything he had noticed, leaving nothing out. Masters, he told a story about a Sith named Darth Plagueis, someone who had discovered secrets about life and death through the Force. He spoke of midichlorians with a precision only a Jedi would have, and has always shown distrust toward this council, hinting that we hide secrets from him. All of this together forms a pattern I can no longer ignore. I am certain the Chancellor is the Sith we seek, Anakin declared, his voice firm, without any hesitation before the assembled masters. Mace Windu rose slowly, his expression serious as he processed everything he had just heard. This confirms suspicions we had already been harboring for some time, though we didn't have concrete enough proof to act. The Chancellor's concentration of power, his refusal to relinquish office, and now this knowledge of the Sith. It all fits together in a disturbing way, Windu declared, exchanging a meaningful glance with Plo Koon and Ki-Adi-Mundi, who nodded silently. Yoda, finally, opened his eyes, his voice resonating slowly through the chamber. Dangerous, this is. Act, we must. But with caution, we must proceed. CC Tin and Agen Ko-Lar exchanged worried glances, aware that this decision would change the course of the war. After a brief discussion among the masters, weighing the risks and consequences of directly confronting the leader of the Republic, the Council reached a decision. We will arrest the Chancellor immediately before he realizes we've discovered him, Mace Windu declared, his voice full of determination. I will go personally along with Yoda. We need to act quickly and discreetly. Anakin, feeling adrenaline take hold of him, stepped forward immediately. Master Windu, I want to go too. I'm the one who brought this information. I have the right to be there, Anakin asked, his voice carrying an urgency he could barely contain. Mace Windu, however, shook his head, his expression firm and non-negotiable. No, Anakin. Your closeness to the Chancellor could complicate the situation, and we cannot take unnecessary risks on a mission of this magnitude. You will stay here at the temple, Windu determined, ending the discussion before Anakin could insist again. Obi-Wan, noticing the frustration etched on his former apprentice's face, placed a hand on his shoulder in a gesture of silent solidarity. I'll stay with you, Anakin. Let's wait together for their return, said Obi-Wan, his voice calm, trying to ease the tension still hanging in the air as the other masters prepared to leave for the Chancellor's office. While the rest of the council headed toward the Chancellor's office, Yoda and Mace Windu at the front of the small group, Anakin remained in Obi-Wan's quarters, trying to contain the restlessness growing inside him with each passing minute. Obi-Wan, noticing his former apprentice's state, kept up a steady conversation, trying to distract him from the voices Anakin always heard in moments of extreme tension. Talk to me, Anakin. Tell me about anything, about your recent missions, about whatever you want. Just don't stay silent, said Obi-Wan, his calm voice trying to anchor the young Jedi in the present. Anakin nodded, trying to follow his master's advice, but his hands remained restless, alternating between crossing his arms and clenching his fists, as if that relieved part of the tension he felt. Despite Obi-Wan's efforts, Anakin couldn't fully calm down. He paced back and forth across the room, his mind caught on the possibilities of what might happen in the Chancellor's office. Master, what if something goes wrong? What if Palpatine notices and reacts before they manage to arrest him? Anakin asked, his voice carrying an anxiety he could barely disguise. Obi-Wan tried to reassure him, though he too felt the weight of the situation. Mace Windu is one of the most skilled warriors I've ever known, Anakin. They know what they're doing. Trust them, Obi-Wan replied, though his own words carried a slight tone of uncertainty that Anakin, even distracted, managed to notice. It was then that Anakin stopped pacing, turning abruptly to face Obi-Wan, his expression shifting to something graver, almost desperate. Master, he can't die. Palpatine can't die, Anakin declared, his voice firm, but charged with an urgency that surprised Obi-Wan. The former master furrowed his brow, confused by the intensity of that statement. Why do you say that, Anakin? He is dangerous, and if he really is the Sith you suspect, his death might be necessary to end that threat. Obi-Wan pondered, trying to understand the origin of that sudden and oddly specific concern. Anakin hesitated for a long moment, feeling that the time had come to reveal something he had kept for years, something that might explain part of his constant anxiety. Master, there's something I need to tell you, something I've hidden from you and from the Council for a long time. Anakin began, his voice trembling slightly. Palpatine once told me about a Sith power capable of preventing the death of loved ones. And I need to know if that's possible because I've been having visions, nightmares about Padme dying. Obi-Wan's eyes widened, surprised by the direct mention of the Senator, but even more surprised by what came next. Padme, Master. I love her. We got married secretly a while ago. Anakin finally confessed, the words coming out like a weight he had carried for too long. Obi-Wan remained silent for a moment, observing the revelation with a mix of surprise and, curiously, a certain relief at finally understanding some pieces that hadn't fit before. I suspected there was something between you two, Anakin. I noticed the way you spoke of her, the way your eyes changed when her name came up in conversations. But marriage, that I didn't expect, said Obi-Wan.
Matt.
Darth, theorist, right.
Okay, this one I'm willing to sit through. If it takes this long.
What if Anakin Skywalker received a purple kyber crystal from Ilum? Let's explore the depths of it in the video. If you enjoy deep dives into Harry Potter or Game of Thrones, check out our sister channels, Half-Blood Theorist and Three-Eyed Theorist. Links in the description. The ice caverns of Ilum glow with refracted light as a group of younglings move through the ancient tunnels during the gathering. Each child follows the pull of the Force toward the kyber crystal meant for them alone. One by one, they find blue crystals, green crystals, the colors of guardians and counselors, stretching back thousands of years. Anakin Skywalker walks deeper than others. The Force tugs him past dozens of crystals embedded into the frozen walls, past formations that hum with energy, past every color he expects to find. He reaches a dead end where the ice thins into a translucent sheet and a single crystal pulses behind it with a deep violet light. He presses a hand against the wall. The ice cracks beneath his fingers and the crystal falls into his palm. Purple. The masters gathered at the cavern entrance exchange uneasy glances when Anakin emerges holding his prize. Yoda studies the crystal for a long moment, his ears twitching as he reaches into the Force for answers. He senses no corruption, no darkness, only a future so tangled and uncertain that even 900 years of wisdom cannot untangle it. Mace Windu says nothing at first. He stares at the crystal in the boy's hand because he recognizes what it means. Purple is the color of a Jedi who walks the edge between the light and the dark every single day. He carries that burden himself, and he knows what it costs. The crystal's discovery sends ripples through the council. Back on Coruscant, Mace stands before the other masters and makes a request no one expects. He asks to serve as a specialized combat and emotional discipline instructor for Anakin alongside Obi-Wan, who will remain the boy's primary master.
His emotions are powerful. I've seen this before. I've lived it. If no one teaches him how to carry that weight, it will crush him.
Anakin needs guidance, not pressure. He's a boy who grew up as a slave, Master. He responds to trust, not to iron discipline.
And when trust isn't enough to hold back what's inside him? I'm not trying to replace you, Kenobi. I'm trying to give him tools you can't. Clearly, since the boy's future, I cannot. Clouded it is, shifting, but strong his emotions are, yes. Untrained, dangerous they can become.
I made a promise to Qui-Gon. Anakin is my responsibility. If this arrangement undermines his trust in me...
Undermine you, this will not, Obi-Wan. Agree with Master Windu, I do. Benefit from both paths, the boy will.
Obi-Wan pauses for a long moment before nodding reluctantly. Anakin suddenly finds himself answering to two very different Jedi. The 10 years that follow shape Anakin into something the Order has rarely seen. Obi-Wan teaches him compassion, patience, and how to trust the people around him, even when the trust feels dangerous. Mace teaches him discipline, restraint, and the brutal truth that unchecked emotions will destroy everything he loves.
A little bit.
The lessons come hard and often. At 12, Anakin
luckily, other than the appointment in the morning, I don't got much going.
Force push. He cannot Mace makes him meditate for 6 hours straight and refuses to let him touch his lightsaber for a week.
At 14, he charges ahead of Obi-Wan during a training exercise on Ragoon 6 and nearly walks into a predator's den because his instincts outran his awareness. Mace drills him on patience until Anakin can barely stand. At 16, he mouths off to a senior knight who questions his abilities, and Mace pulls him aside and tells him that arrogance is fear wearing a mask, and that every outburst reveals the cracks he is trying to conceal. Anakin grows into an exceptional Jedi. His lightsaber skills advance faster than anyone anticipated, and his connection to the Force deepens with every passing year. But the lessons from Windu carry a weight that Obi-Wan's never do. Every session with Mace ends the same way, with the reminder that Anakin is
I was
always
thinking
one
about pulling
mistake
an
away from
all-nighter.
losing control, always one bad decision away from becoming something terrible. More than once, Anakin catches younger
Then go to
Padawans
bed
staring
after
at the
the
violet blade
kid
hanging
leaves.
from his belt. Some whisper that purple belongs to Jedi who walk too close to darkness. Others call it a sign that the Force chose him for something no one fully understands.
When you're home.
The attention becomes another burden he never asked to carry. Those warnings take on a new urgency when the visions begin. Anakin wakes, drenched in sweat, gasping, his mother's screams still echoing in his skull. Night after night, the same images tear through his sleep. Shmi Skywalker bound and broken, crying out for a son who never comes. He brings the visions to Mace first because Mace has always told him to confront fears directly. Windu listens carefully. and
I was
surprises
giggling
everyone
under
by
my
taking the
breath.
vision
I'm not
seriously.
planning to stay
How
up.
long have you been
I might
seeing
play a
these
little couple
3
because
weeks, every night.
I'm starting
It's
to get
getting worse,
tired, but I'm
Master.
not super. So
She's
I
in
might play
pain.
some Pal
I can
World,
feel it
like
across the
30,
galaxy,
45
and
minutes
I
of
can't
Pal
make it
World.
stop.
These aren't anxiety
When I
dreams.
get off
the
here.
Force is showing him something real. If we
And
ignore this and his
then-
mother dies, we lose him. I promise you that.
Dangerous attachment is, but blind to suffering the Jedi should never be. Go, young Skywalker must, but alone he cannot.
I'll take him. He's my Padawan, and I won't let him face this by himself.
Thank you, Master. I know this goes against everything the Council teaches, but she's my mother. I can't sit here and meditate while she dies.
Mace convenes the Council to authorize the mission, and Anakin and Obi-Wan depart within hours. Their ship burns through hyperspace, and Anakin paces the cockpit the entire journey, his hands trembling against the console. They arrive too late. Anakin finds his mother in a Tusken camp, beaten and starved and barely conscious. He cuts her bindings and cradles her in his arms as she opens her eyes one final time. She touches his face with her fingers that can barely move. Her hand falls. Anakin holds her and feels the life drain out of her body, and something inside him breaks that will never fully heal. Obi-Wan places a hand on his shoulder as Anakin feels the grief run through him, and his tears fall freely in the dim light of the tent. They bury her on
Okay.
the ridge overlooking the homestead. Anakin stands over the grave long after Obi-Wan returns to the ship. Mace had done everything he could. He had believed the visions. He had acted immediately, and Shmi still died. Discipline cannot always prevent loss. That is the cruelest lesson the Force will ever teach him. Enjoying the story? You can listen to these on the go. Search Darth Theorist or Three-Eyed Theorist on your favorite podcast service. Links are in the description. Now, back to it. The grief from Tatooine barely has time to settle before the galaxy demands more from him. In the weeks between his mother's burial and the crisis on Geonosis, Anakin trains with a ferocity that concerns Obi-Wan and impresses Mace. During one session, he pushes too far and brings up something he has been thinking about for months.
Master Windu, I've read about Vapad in the archives. The 7th form. You created it. I want to learn it.
I'm sure you do, Skywalker.
I'm serious. I can feel the darkness in me, and I need a way to use it instead of fighting it all the time. Vapad could be that way.
No, you're not ready yet. Mace's eyes drift to the purple lightsaber at Anakin's hip. Every time he sees it, he's reminded of the burden the Force placed on the young Jedi before either of them truly understood what it meant. He offers no explanation and walks away, leaving Anakin standing alone in the training hall with his fists clenched at his sides. The Separatist conspiracy erupts on Geonosis soon afterward, and the Jedi rush to meet it. In the arena, surrounded by droids and beasts, in the chaos of a battle no one planned for, Mace fights beside Anakin for the first time in real combat. Anakin has sparred with Windu hundreds of times over the years. He has watched him train alone in the upper chambers of the temple, moving through forms with a controlled intensity that made the air feel heavy. But he's never seen this. Mace moves through the arena with a speed and aggression that borders on impossible, his purple blade tearing through the battle droids and Geonosian warriors, feed on the chaos around him. Every kill fuels the next strike. Every moment of danger sharpens his focus. The darkness of the battlefield flows into him and comes back out as pure, devastating precision. Anakin fights at his side and watches with wide eyes because he recognizes what he's seeing. This is Vapad, the form Mace refuses to even discuss with him, unleashed at full power in the heat of real combat. For the first time since Ilum, Anakin understands why the crystal chose him.
It was showing him the path he would spend his entire life trying to not stray from. The clone army arrives and turns the tide, marking the beginnings of the Clone Wars. As the war escalates across dozens of fronts, Mace pulls Anakin aside after a particularly brutal engagement. For the first time, he speaks openly about what Anakin witnessed on Geonosis.
I've watched you practice alone in the temple for years. I thought I understood what Vapad was, but Geonosis was something entirely different. You were channeling the battle itself.
I created it because the darkness inside me demanded an outlet. Vapad lets me channel that energy without surrendering to it, but it requires absolute control. One moment of weakness, and the form consumes you.
I want to do the same, so why don't you teach me?
I will teach you, but you need to master the foundations first. Emotional control, discipline under pressure. You're close, Anakin, but close isn't enough for Vapad.
The war's constant pressure means the right moment never arrives. Every time Mace considers beginning the training, another crisis pulls them apart, another campaign demands their attention, another battle pushes the lesson further into the future. Anakin watches the delays accumulate, and a familiar bitterness takes root. Mace will never trust him fully. The promise of Vapad is just another leash dressed up as mentorship. Over the next 2 years, Anakin becomes one of the Republic's most celebrated generals, while Obi-Wan hunts General Grievous across the Outer Rim.
Okay.
Mace and Anakin fight together on a dozen worlds and earn victories that become legendary across the HoloNet. But every success brings another argument. Anakin pushes too hard, takes too many risks, lets his instincts override his orders. Mace praises his results and condemns his methods in the same breath. Their relationship shifts from mentor and student to something harder to define. Mutual respect tangled with growing frustration. Two men who understand each other better than anyone else in the galaxy and who still cannot stop pushing each other's limits. That tension boils over when Anakin disobeys a direct order to rescue trapped clones and civilians during a costly campaign. The Senate praises him as a hero of the Republic. Mace publicly criticizes the decision, calling it reckless and undisciplined. The divide between them widens into something that the entire order can see. Across the city, in his private office, Chancellor Palpatine watches the HoloNet coverage of their disagreement with quiet satisfaction. He has spent years trying to isolate Anakin from Obi-Wan and failed every time, but Mace Windu was a different target entirely. The cracks between master and student are already forming. All Palpatine needs to do is wait for them to widen. While the war rages across the galaxy, Anakin finds something worth fighting for beyond the battlefield. He marries Padme Amidala in secret on Naboo in a ceremony so small and quiet that the only witnesses are the droids who have followed them since childhood. His love for her gives him strength on the front lines and fills him with a constant fear that follows him everywhere he goes. He's already lost his mother. He cannot survive losing Padme. Mace senses that Anakin is hiding something. He can feel the shift in his energy, the way his focus splits during briefings, the way certain calm messages make his presence in the Force spike with anxiety, but he cannot prove anything. Determined to prove Mace wrong about his readiness, Anakin drives into every surviving record about Vapad he can find in the Temple archives. The form itself requires direct instruction, and he cannot learn the physical techniques from texts alone, but the philosophy that a Jedi can channel raw emotion into focused power without surrendering to the dark side fascinates him. He begins experimenting on his own, feeding his anger and fear into his combat style during missions and pulling them back before they take control. The results are devastating. His already formidable abilities sharpen into something that makes even seasoned Jedi uncomfortable. Mace notices the change, and a deep unease settles over him. Anakin is playing with forces he doesn't fully understand, and the war has left neither of them with enough time to address it properly. The opportunity to confront a far more immediate threat arrives when Republic intelligence locates Dooku negotiating with powerful neutral systems in the Mid-Rim. Mace personally leads the strike team with Anakin at his side, while Obi-Wan continues the campaign against General Grievous on the other side of the galaxy. Command believes this is the best opportunity the Republic will ever have to end the war in a single stroke. The duel begins the moment they breach the compound. Dooku meets them with his curved hilt already ignited, his crimson blade carving through the air with decades of refined technique behind every strike. Mace engages first, pressing with Vapad's controlled aggression, and Anakin flanks from the right. The combined assault forces Dooku backwards across the chamber. Then Anakin changes. His strikes shift from the disciplined Demjo that Obi-Wan taught him into something more raw and aggressive, feeding on the intensity of the fight and channeling it back through his blade.
Mace sees it immediately. Anakin, pull back. You're losing your center. I'm not losing anything. I'm winning. Can't you feel it? His purple blade hammers into Dooku's guard with strikes that grow faster and wilder with every exchange. Dooku's eyes become narrow because he recognizes the philosophy behind the technique, even if the execution is unrefined. You're feeding the darkness without controlling the flow. Stop, now. This is what you wouldn't teach me, Master. So I taught myself. Dooku seizes the opening that Anakin's arrogance creates. He sidesteps a wild overhead strike and uses Anakin's own momentum against him, redirecting the younger Jedi's blade into the floor with a precise parry and follows with a force push that sends Anakin crashing into the far wall. The impact knocks the wind from his lungs, and he slides to the ground, dazed. Mace steps forward without missing a beat and meets Dooku's blade. The duel between them is surgical, two masters of their respective forms testing each other's limits with every exchange. Mace presses with Vapad's relentless aggression, and Dooku answers him with Makashi's elegant precision. But the sustained fight against two opponents has drained the old Sith Lord, and his response is slow by fractions of a second that Mace exploits ruthlessly. Mace disarms him with a sweeping strike that sends Dooku's lightsaber spinning across the floor. Dooku drops to his knees, one hand clutching a wound across his ribs. It's over, Dooku. Surrender. With Dooku disarmed and injured, Mace turns toward Anakin, who is pulling himself to his feet against the far wall. His expression hardens with anger. What you did was reckless. You could have gotten us both killed. That technique you used is a corruption of everything I tried to teach you. It worked. I had him on the ropes before he used your own aggression to throw you into a wall. That's exactly what happens when you channel darkness without discipline. You become predictable. Maybe if you'd actually taught me instead of making me wait for years, you just proved why I didn't. Behind them, Dooku's hand moves in a blur. He pulls a concealed blaster from his sleeve and fires directly at Mace's exposed back. The bolt screams across the chamber, and Mace senses it a fraction too late, turning but unable to bring his blade around at time. Anakin reacts on pure instinct. The same raw channeling that Mace condemned seconds ago surges through him, and his lightsaber snaps up and deflects the bolt into the ceiling. He crosses the distance to Dooku in a blur, kicking the blaster from the old man's grip and sending him sprawling onto his back with a second kick to the chest. Something dark and satisfying swells inside Anakin as he stands over the broken Sith Lord. The adrenaline from the fight, the rush of saving Mace's life, and the raw power still flowing through his body all merge into a feeling he does not want to let go of. Wait. Please. You must listen to me. There is another Sith. My master, Darth Sidious. He controls the Senate from within. He orchestrated this entire war. You must find him before you try to kill my master. Twice.
His purple blade hums at his side as Mace watches from across the chamber, with an expression that shifts from relief to alarm as he sees the look in Anakin's eyes. He opens his mouth to speak, but Anakin brings his saber down before the words leave his lips. Dooku dies on the floor with his hand still reaching towards Mace for mercy. For a heartbeat, Anakin looks down at the violet blade in his hand. It is stained by the same act that would have turned countless Jedi toward darkness, yet the crystal remains unchanged, as if waiting to see what choice he makes next. Mace stares at Dooku's slain body, and the satisfaction drains from Anakin's face as silence stretches between them. The Jedi now know another Sith controls the war from inside the Republic itself, but they have no name and no identity, and Mace has just watched Anakin execute a surrendered prisoner. Dooku's dying words send the Council into action. They secretly begin searching for Darth Sidious, while hiding the intelligence from the Senate to avoid mass panic. Palpatine feels the shift immediately. For the first time in decades, the Jedi are looking in the right direction, and the Dark Lord is no longer the hunter. But the confirmation Anakin dreads most comes from within his own ranks. In a private corridor inside the temple, Mace catches him before he can disappear into another mission.
You killed a man who was begging for his life. I saved your life. He pulled a weapon on you. And what about after the weapon was gone? After he was unarmed and broken on the ground? You enjoyed it, Anakin. I felt it through the Force. What you did in that room is exactly what the dark side wants. You gave in to the satisfaction of power over a helpless man. You've spent my entire life telling me I'm not ready, that I'm one step away from falling. Maybe the problem isn't me, Master. Maybe it's you.
He turns and walks away, and Mace watches him go with a weight settling into his chest that he cannot shake. The nightmares return. This time, it's Padme screaming in the dark, her body convulsing in pain, her hand reaching for him as life drains from her eyes. Every night the same vision tears through his sleep, and every morning Anakin wakes with the terror still gripping his throat. He has already lived through this. He watched his mother die despite doing everything he could. The universe is telling him it will happen again, and the fear consumes him from the inside, hollowing him out until the only thing left is desperation. Mace notices Anakin becoming increasingly unstable, the darkness around him growing thicker with every passing week, but he mistakes it for
almost done
trauma from the war, for the accumulated weight of years of combat and death. He does not realize that everything Anakin does now revolves around a single terrifying question. How do I stop the woman I love from dying? Palpatine senses this shift too, and he moves with patience. He begins summoning Anakin for private conversations in his office, each one carefully designed to widen the cracks that already exist between Anakin and his masters. In one meeting, Palpatine asks about the mission to kill Dooku and gives Anakin the official report, but the Chancellor presses gently for what really happened.
The Council criticized you for killing Dooku, didn't they? I can see it in your face. You saved Master Windu's life, and they treated you like a criminal. You acted decisively in the heart of battle. Dooku was a Sith Lord who already tried to kill your master twice in the same night. What were you supposed to do? Let him try a third time? The Senate considers you a hero for ending that monster's reign, Anakin, even if the Council refuses to see it that way.
The words settle into place where Mace's criticism still burns. Anakin says nothing, but he doesn't leave either. Over the following weeks, Palpatine continues the pattern. Each meeting is casual, friendly, nothing that would raise suspicion. He asks about the war. He asks about Anakin's victories, about the burdens of command. He listens with a sympathy that Anakin has never received from the Council, and he never pushes too hard or asks too much. He simply makes himself the one person in Anakin's life who never tells him he is wrong. During one late-night conversation, Palpatine steers the discussion towards loss. He speaks about friends he's buried over his long political career and the helplessness of watching people he cared about suffer while he lacked the power to intervene. Anakin recognizes the feeling immediately, and before he can stop himself, he's talking about his mother, about arriving too late, about holding her while she died.
The Jedi teach that attachment is dangerous, that we must accept loss as the will of the Force. But I've always believed that the truly powerful should never have to accept the death of someone they love, not when the power to prevent it exists.
What do you mean, the power to prevent it?
There are teachings older than the Jedi Order, Anakin. Knowledge they locked away because it frightened them. Powers over life and death that the Sith once mastered.
The conversation ends there. Palpatine doesn't push further. He lets the idea sit in Anakin's mind and grow on its own while the nightmares about Padme grow worse every single night. 2 more weeks pass. Anakin returns to Palpatine's office again and again, drawn by the only person who seems to understand what he's going through. Each visit peels back another layer. Palpatine shares the story of Darth Plagueis the Wise, framing it as an ancient history, a cautionary tale about a brilliant mind whose power over death was lost because his apprentice betrayed him. Anakin absorbs every word. When Palpatine finally judges that the fear has consumed Anakin completely, he summons him one last time and drops the mask he's worn for decades.
I know about Padme, Anakin. I know about the visions, and I know the Jedi cannot help you. Their teachings forbid the very knowledge that could save her life.
What? How do you know? I never told you.
Do you know why the Force gave you a purple crystal, Anakin? Because it knew you were never meant to be like the other Jedi. It has been trying to tell you that since Ilum.
You're him. You are Darth Sidious.
I won't lie anymore, my boy. The power I told you about, the power of Plagueis, it was never lost. I am his apprentice, and I can teach you to save the people you love from dying.
Alexa, set 2-minute timer.
Trust me.
The offer hangs in the air between them. Every fear Anakin has carried since childhood screams at him to accept, to do whatever it takes, to sacrifice anything and anyone for the chance to save Padme. But Mace Windu's voice echoes in his mind. The attachments we conceal are the ones that destroy us. And another voice follows it, his own, years younger, standing in Mace's training.
And then we need to stir it for 2 minutes, stir in the oils, get them real
will use whatever you love most as
bound with the wax.
Mace had told him that when he was 14 years old.
And then we
the
will...
words ever since. Now he understands them for the first time.
I won't become you. I
pour
won't trade
these
everything I am for a promise from a Sith Lord.
last 2 candles once the temp comes down to 130.
And I almost let you.
He leaves Palpatine's office and goes directly to Mace Windu. In that instant,
My funnels have really helped.
The order since Ilum finally makes sense. It was never a promise that Anakin would walk close to darkness. It was a reminder that every step along that edge would always be a choice.
With Yoda deployed to Kashyyyk and Obi-Wan hunting Grievous on Utapau, Mace assembles the only strike team available: Kit Fisto, Ajen Kalar, CC-Teen, and Anakin. 5 Jedi against the most dangerous Sith Lord in 1,000 years. The doors to the Chancellor's office open, and Mace ignites his purple blade. Anakin's purple blade hums to life beside it.
Chancellor Palpatine, you are under arrest for treason against the Republic.
Palpatine's face twists with contempt, and his crimson lightsaber erupts from his sleeve. He moves with a speed that defies his age, cutting down Ajen Kalar before the Jedi can raise his weapon. CC-Teen falls 2 seconds later. Kit Fisto lasts longer, his blade dancing through a desperate defense until Sidious finds the gap and drives his saber through the Nautilan's chest. The 3 Jedi Masters die in a span of a heartbeat. Mace and Anakin stand alone against the Dark Lord. They fight as a team, Mace pressing with Vapad's relentless aggression while Anakin flanks and strikes from angles that force Sidious to divide his attention. The office shatters around them as furniture explodes and the viewport cracks and the floor buckles under the weight of their combined power. Sidious gives ground for the first time, pushed further than he expected by 2 purple blades working in unison.
Alexa.
Then Sidious changes tactics. He abandons his lightsaber and reaches into the Force with something far more devastating than lightning. He reaches into Anakin's mind.
He refused to teach you, Vapad, year after year. You were never good enough.
Stop it. Get out of my head.
Every time you succeed, he criticized you. Every time you saved lives, he found fault. The Senate called you a hero, and he called you reckless.
Memories flood through Anakin's mind. Mace standing before the council, opposing him. Mace publicly condemning his methods. Mace telling him he enjoyed killing Dooku. Years of restraint and denial, and the constant reminder that he was always one mistake away from becoming a monster.
He will never trust you, Anakin. He will never see you as an equal. He sees a weapon to be controlled, a threat to be contained. Kill him now and save Padme. It is the only way.
The resentment that Anakin has buried for years erupts through his chest, and his vision blurs with rage. He pivots, and his purple blade swings toward Mace with all the power of the Chosen One behind it.
Anakin, what are you doing? Snap out of it.
Mace catches the strike, and the shock of the purple against purple sends tremors through the office floor. 2 violet blades crash together, identical in color, yet separated by everything they represent. One forged through decades of discipline, the other still struggling to decide what kind of man it will wield. They separate and collide again and again. Anakin fights with raw fury, channeling every frustration and every wound into strikes that push Mace backward across the ruined office. Sidious watches from the shadows with a smile spreading across his face. Mace has spent a lifetime fighting the darkness. He reads Anakin's anger and begins turning it against him, directing the younger Jedi's momentum into counters that should end.
I'm gonna need more wax. I went through a ton
dwarfs anything
tonight on just 8 candles.
Every time Mace finds an opening, Anakin closes it with brute strength, battering through parries that would stop any other Jedi in the galaxy.
I thought the 5 pounds would make a lot more than this.
And his footwork tightens as the space behind him shrinks. Then Sidious reaches out through the Force. He pushes against Mace's concentration with a wave of dark side pressure that disrupts his connection.
I think I'll finish off the rest of what I got on small
Mace
candles.
stumbles and Anakin's next strike crashes through his guard and sends his lightsaber spinning from his grip. A force push from Anakin drives Mace backward, and the Jedi Master slams into the Chancellor's broken desk and slides to the floor. Anakin stands over him, breathing hard, his yellow-tinged eyes blazing and his purple blade humming at Mace's throat. Sidious steps forward from the shadows.
Finish him, Anakin. Strike him down and claim your destiny.
Mace looks up at Anakin from his knees. Blood runs from a cut above his eye, and his chest heaves with exhaustion. He has no weapon, no leverage, no way to fight back. He's completely at Anakin's mercy. He stares directly into his eyes.
I'm not going to fight you anymore. If this is who you are, then do it. Kill me. But you'll do it looking me in the eye, and you'll know exactly what you become.
The office goes silent, except for the crackle of exposed wiring and the distant howl of wind through the shattered viewport. Anakin's hands tremble around his lightsaber. He looks at Mace's face and sees the man who believed his visions about his mother, the man who fought beside him on a dozen worlds, the man who pushed him harder than anyone else because he understood the darkness better than anyone else.
Do it. Kill him.
No.
He deactivates his blade and steps back. Sidious's smile vanishes.
You ungrateful fool.
lightning erupts from Sidious's fingers, arcing toward Mace, and Anakin steps into its path. His purple blade reignites and catches the energy, and the impact drives him backward across the floor, his boots carving into the broken tile. He pushes forward, one step at a time, the Force flowing through him with a clarity he's never felt before. Every lesson Obi-Wan taught him about patience, every lesson Mace taught him about control, every battle, every loss, every scar, all of it crystallizes into a single moment of absolute purpose. He closes the distance. Sidious pours everything he has into the lightning, but Anakin splits the energy with his blade and keeps walking forward. The Dark Lord reaches for his lightsaber, and Anakin's free hand catches it through the Force and crushes it against the far wall. With a violent, desperate scream, Sidious pushes one final burst of lightning, but it is too late. Anakin's blade completes a single horizontal arc, and Darth Sidious, the Phantom Menace, who orchestrated a galactic war and corrupted the Republic from within, falls to the floor, cut in half. The Chosen One stands in the eerie quiet of the ruined office, his purple blade still humming, and the prophecy is fulfilled, without him ever becoming a Sith's apprentice. The Republic celebrates. The war ends within the week as the Separatist leadership collapses and the droid army shuts down across every front. The galaxy breathes a sigh of relief for the first time in years.
Finishing up.
A quiet meditation chamber in the Jedi Temple, Anakin sits across from Mace, and neither of them is celebrating.
I need you to know something. When I turned on you in the office, it wasn't just Sidious manipulating me. Part of me wanted to do it. Part of me had wanted to do it for years.
I know. I felt it. And I need you to know that when you turned, my first instinct was to kill you. I nearly did. I was too hard on you. I saw myself in you, and I was so afraid of what you would become that I never gave you room to grow into what you should have been.
And I was too busy resenting you that I almost proved every fear you ever had about me right. You said I wasn't ready for Vapad, that I needed to master the foundations first.
I did.
Was I ready today?
Today, you were.
3 words. 20 years of waiting compressed into a single breath. Anakin feels the weight of them settle into his chest, and for a moment he cannot speak. For the first time in all the years they have known each other, Mace Windu places complete trust in Anakin Skywalker, and Anakin finally understands the burden that Mace carries every single day of his life. With Sidious, Dooku, and Grievous all destroyed, the Republic begins the long process of rebuilding. The Senate elects new leadership, and the emergency powers that Palpatine accumulated over the course of the war are formally dissolved. Systems that suffered under Separatist occupation receive aid, and reconstruction begins across the galaxy. But the Jedi discover a deeper problem within their own ranks. The Clone Wars exposed fractures in the Order that peace alone cannot heal. Many younger Jedi who fought on the front lines believe the
now we gotta clean.
That the rigid suppression of emotion left them vulnerable to exactly the kind of manipulation Palpatine exploited. Anakin stands before the Council and proposes sweeping reforms to the Jedi Code. He argues that emotions should be understood and guided, that attachments should be trained and managed instead of forbidden entirely. The deaths of his mother and the execution of Dooku, the moment he nearly killed Mace in the Chancellor's office, all of it taught him that suppressing emotion only guarantees it will explode when the pressure becomes unbearable. Dozens of knights who fought beside him during the war openly support his vision. They have seen what Anakin has seen, felt what he has felt. The Order must evolve or it will break again the next time darkness comes calling. Mace agrees that the Order has become too rigid. The Council accepts several of Anakin's reforms, loosening restrictions on emotional expression and allowing Jedi greater freedom in how they connect with the people they serve. But Mace disputes the pace and scope of the remaining changes.
You're asking the Order to rewrite a code that has sustained us for 1,000 years, Anakin. Some of these changes are necessary, but if we move too fast, we'll create a generation of Jedi who mistake passion for wisdom.
And if we move too slowly, we lose everyone who actually learned something from this war.
So on that note, I think I'm gonna be getting off for tonight. We got a lot done. 8 candles poured. 4 hours of streaming. I'm satisfied. So on that note, I'm going to say good night. See you later. Don't have too much fun. Love you, baby.